You know, because like you're not aware, you're not conscious of like what you look like when you're doing your thing.
That's true.
You just do it, but then to see it recorded,
I
and
know
like,
I look super cool when I do it.
I bet.
I just know.
Apparently,
Okay.
apparently, I look like an L7 weenie.
That's what they say. I don't know.
Oh, is that an inside joke? I don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Dare you?
Told
All
you, IJPH. Welcome to Waiting to Dry, everybody. It's the art podcast with the highest IJPH. That's inside jokes per hour.
Wow.
I ran the analytics. All right. My name is Sergio Lopez.
I'm Josh Lawyer,
And we got Dennis Brown, a.k.a. Bagger43, on the show.
a.k.a. Steal Your
AKA.
Girlfriend.
Wow.
Just kidding.
Well, I'm actually a nice guy, but greetings.
What's up, man? Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I'm flattered for the opportunity. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Here we go.
Yeah. You let us into your house.
Yeah.
Yes. Welcome.
Showed us everything you own.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it was somewhat entertaining.
Yeah, it was super awesome. You have a
Rad.
super awesome art collection.
Oh, thanks, man.
I'm very jealous of.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Might rob you.
Well, I guess I know who to go to. And if I'm missing anything, like
Yeah, you need to get it back. Just come over to his place.
Yeah.
yeah. No, it took some years to accumulate the collection, but I'm pretty stoked to have it and flattered for a lot. I mean, yeah, the pieces I managed to even kind of pick up over the years. So yeah,
For sure. So, looking around your house, and it's obvious that you collect, different things. Like
Right.
you have a toy collection of like the Power Rangers and things like that. And
yeah. It's mostly like vintage Japanese related things. Like, I mean, yeah. As far as like my backstory, like I spent a lot of time actually living overseas in Asia. Like my father was in the Air Force.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so I mean, I grew up on watching a lot of Japanese related like shows. Like,
So how long did you live in Japan?
altogether, like it's like 12 years. It's like I guess like the context on that is like so I was born in Philippines.
Okay.
I'm half Filipino, and like,
Oh.
my dad was stationed in Philippines, and met my mom there, and then
Mhm.
and I came into the world, and then from there, it seemed like he kind of just decided to stay in Asia, so we kind of
Okay.
like just hopped around different Air Force bases. So we went from like I think after the first 3 years in Philippines, went to mainland Japan. Then I was there for like 3 years, and then went back to Philippines for a year, and then from there we went to Okinawa,
Mhm.
which is like a small island south of Japan. It's pretty rad too because it's like it's kind of like a Hawaiian. I feel like a Hawaiian version of Japan, where it's minus like the mountain ranges, but it's just like super tropical, but yet it's still has Japanese vibe, So I was there for like 3 years, and then we moved back up to how'd it go? I'm sorry, 3 years in Okinawa, and then 3 years in Hawaii, and then 3 years back in mainland Japan,
Mhm.
the first base we stayed, and then after that 3 years there, I then went to Okinawa again, and then I was there for 2 years. I graduated high school,
Oh, wow.
and
So are you pretty fluent in speaking Japanese?
well, so that's the interesting thing because I grew up on military installations, and I'm surrounded by Americans.
Oh. Huh.
But it's such a unique setup because it's like a small American town,
Mhm.
but in another country, and I mean I'm surrounded by like obviously like the country and the culture,
Mhm.
but yet I'm surrounded also by like Americans. So
Oh.
it's like, I mean, hence why I'm like fluent in English,
Right.
Yeah.
and like I don't have like an accent or anything, but like but yeah, it was like I said, such a unique kind of like upbringing, and
For sure.
and it's not even like a trip too, because like that's all I knew growing up. But then once I came to the States, and then it's like, oh wait, this is not normal. Like this is actually like like I feel like I always feel like I have to go into some type of explanation to explain like context of my background and stuff.
Right.
I wonder if Hiroshi Sato has to do that. Do you know him at all?
Hiroshi, was it one of the previous?
Yeah. Because he's Japanese, but he grew up in Tanzania, part of it.
Yeah. I had a chance to meet him a while back, and we chopped it up for a bit. But I think we've only met like a couple of times. But yeah, the first time we met, we actually chopped it up for a while. But it was kind of interesting, kind of getting his backstory, and it was even cool, like kind of tuning in on the previous episode. Just
well, he was saying it's like half in, half out of Japanese culture for almost a similar reason.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing. That's like a trip in its own regard, because it's like, I mean, I was exposed to a lot of the culture and I mean everything from like, I mean, yeah, like. I mean, I was born in the 80s or 83, but simultaneously I'm growing up with like American 80s kind of culture, you know, everything from like, Ninja Turtles to like Transformers and all that. But at the same time, you know, I'm also, I got to witness like the Japanese kind of culture, but also at the same time frame where like, like was watching Power Rangers before it became to the US and before it became like this phenomenon, or like, I was like watching Dragon Ball in real time, as like as episodes were airing. Like I remember it being a thing where like Wednesday night at 7 p.m. and I was like in fourth grade. It was like, oh man, just getting like super amped about like the new episode. But like, and so it's like such a trip, like coming to the US and just seeing how like all these things that I was so accustomed to as a kid all of a sudden became like a phenomenon like in the US, but like later, you know? Right. So you're just like, whoa, like, okay. But yeah, it's like I said, a trip in its own regard, because it's, I mean, obviously, like, I'm an American citizen, but yet this is the longest I've lived in the U.S. Like, I moved in the U.S. 2001 for college. But yeah, prior to that, it was like, I was American, but it was kind of weird when folks would be like, "Oh yeah, you're American," but I'm like, "Yeah, I never really lived over there." Like I would come like visit occasionally because like my dad's side of family is out in Florida. Okay. But as far as like when I think of home, I can't help but think of like Asia. You know, like even though I mean, it's unfortunate I don't speak the language, like Japanese language. But yet, culture-wise, and a lot of things that I'm like accustomed to, it's just like so natural to me. Like even the language, like even though I don't speak it, when I hear it, it's just like it's like normal. It's like which is kind of like a trip. But
that's awesome.
But a lot of the culture, I definitely was like immersed in a lot of that, and it was kind of like the best of both worlds, because it's like like growing up in the 80s was like great with the exposure of all that, but then also at the same time being in Japan as a kid, like. Because I could go to like the local toy store, like on base, and like have access to like all these American import stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then I go off to like a Japanese store. It's like, oh my gosh, these are all like exclusive Japanese stuff that. And this is before they started sending like, I mean, like like now you can go to Japantown and you have like all this stuff that's like imported, like Japanese books to toys or whatever. But at the time, in like 80s, they weren't doing any of that, right? No. And it was like I was there getting to see that, like in real time, which is the trip. But at the same time, when you're a kid, you're not conscious of like that setup or like that unique situation. You're just like just living, right? For sure. So like a lot of times, it's like in retrospect, it's like whoa, like maybe even hence the collection of stuff, because being that in a sense, I don't really have like a home. Right. Where like when people were asking, like, it's like, oh yeah, I'm from here, and like my roots are here, and you have like a place to go to visit. Like, for me to go back to places I lived, a lot of times I'm not even there anymore, which is a trip. Like for example, I went to Hawaii 2 years ago, and there's like a community that I used to live in, and I had a chance to go back on base and see it, and it's like gone. It's just like they just demolished the whole area and just built like a whole new community. Wow. And it's kind of, some aspects of it is kind of sad, because it's like, oh man, it's like it's gone. It's just like all I have is like my memories and like photos to hold on to. Right. Like to kind of reference that, I guess, that time. But I guess going back to the collection, it's like a lot of things that I do have are kind of more reminiscent of like the time and place. So so most of these are like vintage, you know, Japanese collectibles from the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
But
yeah,
I could point to a lot of different things and be like, oh, well, this is like, I remember when this came out, and like I used to live here, and like, you know, so this is kind of like a way of like, having
a physical object kind of.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like more rooted to like my roots and like upbringing, and yeah, I mean,
that's cool. I have this weird obsession with like home as like a, and like the idea of like what that represents is to each person.
Okay.
And like your story is so interesting because of that, because the assumption that if you grew up on a base or whatever, that you wouldn't even be allowed to go and visit home unless you got permission or something.
Right.
And the fact that they would, you know, because I've been to like abandoned military bases and things like that, like in Monterey and things, and to have that be, I don't know, because there is something special about like your childhood memories and reminiscing about that. You know, for the most part, some people have dark childhoods, but but it kind of, you know, that memory is, you know, pretty. At least for me, it's like a special thing, and so it's interesting to think about it in how you've lived, just because. I don't know. It's so weird. It just is like it's like trying. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to like work out how I'm thinking about this while I'm talking, and it's
yeah. I mean,
miserable.
It's I mean, even for me, it's kind of like a thing that I kind of I'm thinking about it as I talk. Because I mean, a lot of times I always have to kind of explain a little bit about my background, just because
for sure
it's just like yeah. I mean, the typical question is like, oh yeah, where are you from? And then it turns into like about that, you know, like I'm not actually from anywhere.
Yeah.
So then it just opens up the whole thing, you know. But at the same time, I'm like, I was fortunate to have this experience and upbringing, because it's like if I was to ever have a family and try to replicate what I experienced, like how am I ever gonna do that? Like unless like either join the military and try to follow like my dad's like kind of footsteps in to some degree. But it's just crazy, because even like said the places was just like Hawaii, mainland Japan, and Okinawa, like just those three places alone. It's like I gotta pay to go back to those places now.
Yeah.
And for like Okinawa, I haven't been back since 2002, and so yeah, that was interesting, because like I said, I was only there for 2 years, and then I got accepted to art school in Florida, and so I went to Ringling School of Art and Design, and that actually became like, that was actually like happenstance, because my dad's side of the family lives in Florida, and being that my dad was still stationed in Okinawa, he was like, well, if we're gonna send you off to college, we want to make sure that like you're at least near family, so that you're not just like by yourself, right? And also, I just knew at the time I just wanted to go to art school, just because like I mean, you know, cliche, like I just was into art ever since I was a kid. And then I kind of just took as whatever classes I could over time. And then like, I guess once it got to the point of like post high school, I was like, all right, well, I know for sure I want to go to art school, just because, you know, I didn't know what to expect, but I just knew that was kind of like the next step. Right. And fortunately found Ringling, Ringling School of Design. And then.
Is that pretty close to where your
family's at?
Yeah, dad's family?
Kind of like, my dad's side of my family's mostly around Central Florida, kind of like Ocala, like Tampa, and that's like, it's like roughly like a 2-hour drive to like Sarasota.
Oh, okay.
And that was like even the funny thing too, because it was like, I was like, Sarasota, where's that? I was like, I kind of had like an idea of like the layout of Florida, but but yeah, like I guess what was I initially talking about? Oh yeah, because I was talking about what Okinawa. Sorry, I'm like backtracking. I was like, okay, wait.
What? I got a quick question.
Oh, what's up?
Like in that kind of your environment of growing up, how is the family dynamic? Like, because since you're in Japan, and I'm assuming a good chunk of your family's in the Philippines from your mom's side, and then you have your family in the States, but you're kind of out there. Do the people that are in the same experience as you kind of end up being family like, or do you come back and visit people? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I say even that's interesting. Like like I said, my mom's from Philippines, and her whole side of the family is still in Philippines.
Oh, really?
So she's the only one that actually like left and like you know kind of I guess left the country and
ventured out.
Yeah. So and then like I said, my whole dad's side's mostly in Florida, and as far as like our immediate family, like it was pretty much just like me, my parents, and then my sister. And my sister was actually born in Japan, and yeah, so naturally we just became like a really tight knit family just because it was just us. Because in like most kind of family settings, right? You when it comes to occasions, they're usually like you usually have some type of big gathering or whatever. And I mean, we've had a couple of like kind of family reunions here and there, but it was just like kind of scattered over periods of time. So like to some degree, we kind of felt like we're like the oddball family. And like when we show up, because we're just like, hey, we're related. Like like how's it going? But yeah, that was like an interesting dynamic in its own right. But then even like with Philippines, like I haven't been back since like 2002, and I mean I still just recently I like kind of connected with some of my cousins like via like Facebook, which is actually kind of a trip. But yeah, I mean as far as like the dynamic of that, it was just kind of like this intimate setting with the family, and then we just kind of just moved on accordingly. But as far as like other families and other friends that I've kind of had with bases, like we just got accustomed to like just the lifestyle of it, where you would move to a base and there was always like the duration of like a 3-year period where like if your dad was stationed somewhere, it's usually like a 3-year time frame. So and the friends that we did have, it was just we just had an understanding that it's like, okay, our friendship would probably extend maybe at the most a year or two, just because it's like of that overlap of like the 3-year duration. So so naturally too, even like the friendships became like super tight knit, because it was just like if you guys clicked, then you'd be like, all right, well, we're just gonna hold it down for as long as like we're friends. And then if if your parents leave or if we move, then it is what it is. And then and this is like pre Facebook and social media, so it was just like understanding that we'll just try to enjoy the friendship and time for that that time frame.
For sure.
But one thing that's actually cool about it is the friends that I end up keeping over time is these are people from like all over the place. So then naturally they just spread out across like the world, or different parts of the US. So like say if I was going on a road trip, it's kind of cool that there's like all these different spots that like I have friends that or have some type of like connection with.
That's awesome.
So it's I feel like it kind of could just go on and on about just that whole lifestyle, because it's just like
one other thing I'm curious about is like, so was like culture a thing that you were able to like kind of be influenced by, like I don't know if your your mom being Filipino, if she kind of like was able to, I don't know, pass on some version of the Philippine culture.
Oh, for sure. Well, okay, so like I said, I was born in the Philippines, but there was actually a good portion of my early life where like I actually used to speak Tagalog. It used to be like, it's I guess to some degree like I guess my first language. But then my mom was like, "Well, you're gonna go to school with American kids, so you got to speak English," But so like, I mean, like mom just cooked Filipino dishes throughout my whole life, so that's like something that I just got used to. Like literally, I went off to college and I was like, "Oh crap, what am I gonna eat now?" It's like I kind of didn't know what to to do at that point. But it was interesting. Yeah, 'cause like I said, I grew up eating Filipino food, but then I'm also like living in Japan, so then I'd leave the base and then kind of partake in whatever restaurants, and so you get like kind of immersed in that. But at the same time, I'm a kid, so it's not like I could just go to a restaurant and just buy my own whatever, right? It's just like we'll probably go to like a Japanese McDonald's, and and then you'll notice like the difference there, where they have like localized like kind of restaurants or whatever. But yeah, culturally, it's just like a mixed bag, because there's naturally a lot of things that I've learned through like Filipino culture, and then just certain ways of like how my mom like raised us, just and then also being like well, I'm half Jamaican, so that's my other half.
Right. Okay.
I didn't get too much immersed with a lot of the Jamaican side. But then naturally, like, when people see me, it's I mean, obviously I'm black when you first see me, so it's like obviously there's like that there's a culture there,
Sure,
right? But yeah, like I said, just even well, I guess one thing that was interesting growing up overseas and with the military is like a lot of the friends that I did have also had similar backgrounds where I did have a lot of mixed friends. Like I had friends that were like either half Japanese, half black, or half white, half Japanese, or half Korean, half black. So it was like it was like a common thing to be kind of like mixed, which is like it's just a unique setting to where you could just all this overlap of like culture
for sure,
which is amazing. And then at the same time we were just whatever American culture was going on or happening during those time frames was also kind of being imported to the wherever we were.
Right.
I mean, it was a trip because it was like delayed, like for example, like, I remember when like Home Alone was like a big movie back in like the 90s, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't have access to that. Like that movie came, like we'd have like one major theater on base. And I remember when that movie arrived, like the line like wrapped around the block just because it was just like a blockbuster that you'd hear about. But like, we'll get movies, but like I said, it's like delayed. So like it became like more of like an event to go to movies, versus here you could just go and just see whatever you want, right? But
for sure,
for there it was just like it was like a thing. It's like, oh man, like this movie just showed up on base, like we can go check it out now, like so yeah, like I mean, even with that said, like I have like a love of movies, and I think it kind of comes from that to some degree, but yeah,
that's cool. So your collecting kind of started in your childhood and kind of built from there. Or is it started kind of later in years to reminisce about that, or how did that?
Yeah, I feel like it. Let me see. I feel like it slowly trickled over time. Like I think when we were moving a lot, like a lot of times we just kind of just get rid of stuff just to make it easy on the move. And then I think it just got to a point where I became conscious of like, oh yeah, like why don't I actually just try to keep this stuff, because we're just tossing everything all the time. And even like like my own art, like I remember there was a time where I was like, oh yeah, maybe I should start keeping my art, because like I remember being conscious of it in like 5th grade, where it's like oh, I don't have any art pre 4th grade, like I don't have like, because it was something that I was always doing, but then for whatever reason, like it would just get misplaced or tossed. And so then like at that point we became conscious, like oh yeah, well, I should probably just catalog my own like art development. So then from like that was like one conscious moment where like
from 5th grade.
Yeah, so like
wow,
whatever my favorite drawings at the time, like those are probably my oldest drawings that I actually have is from that moment. And then over time then it just became like a thing. But then as far as like other things, like I don't know if it was like kind of like a subconscious thing too, because like my mom has like a pretty interesting collection of like she used to collect a lot of like ceramic birds, and there's like a particular term for them. What are they called?
Like heirlooms or whatever? Or, no, that's not what I'm thinking. Not heirlooms.
I can't think. That's like the right word.
The ones you pass on to like your family members. Those things. What are those called?
No, like you go to like a department store and you'll just see like these ceramic like sculptures of like I don't know, like.
Would you keep it in like a glass cabinet or something?
Yeah. Like I can't think of the right word off the top. But anyway, she would collect a lot of kind of like Asian kind of artifacts and just things, and they kind of just decorated the house. And to some degree, like, I mean, there used to be moments where she would get like all my robots and just like line them up and kind of set them up as a display, So I don't know if just from that, like subconsciously, it just became like a thing where, I know I kind of started doing the same, but
there's probably something there,
yeah. But I think as far as collecting it, I think it became. I feel like it came later. Like I think once I started getting into high school, like like my interest shifted from like toys to like, I mean, high school, you're just thinking of like
girls.
Yeah, like kind of like like it's like, oh, I could actually buy outfits and and actually like with like
kind of like your personal, like, I don't know, how you present yourself, kind of that, like, how you're perceived by others is kind of very important in high school.
Well, yeah, I mean, high school is like this, obviously appearance is like well, I don't know, depending on whatever groups you kind of like, social groups you kind of come up in.
Sergio was a goth, or is that
right? But I mean, I grew up on a lot of like hip hop, so like culturally, there's like a lot of overlap with like fashion and like sneakers,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
So that was like a thing where it's like, oh man, like I could actually like I could buy Jordans now, like I could like, because I remember like was it like 7th grade, and just seeing like I don't know, just like the dopest Jordans that just dropped at that time, which is like I remember specifically like are you guys into sneakers at all, or no much about?
I know very little.
Okay.
Same here.
Well, like have you guys heard of like the Space Jams, like the Jordan Space
I've heard
Jams?
of them, yeah.
Like
those the black and purple, blue ones or whatever.
It's black and kind of clear bottom.
Yeah,
but
you're talking
they initially came out, I believe, in 95, 96, but they weren't Space Jams at the time. Like those didn't come out until like the movie. But the Jordan 11s came out like 96, and I remember seeing those on like some of my classmates, and I was like, whoa, like those are amazing, and like that kind of sparked like the whole like kind of shoe kind of like interest, and then yeah, I guess
that's
like
another rabbit hole you can just dive deep
into.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother thing. But
the Yeezys just dropped today or something.
The second was it the 700s just dropped.
Yeah,
I just get sorry, I don't want to get super technical. Like but there's like a local sneaker shop down the street that they carry a pretty good collection of stuff. But
really?
But yeah, I guess in high school I started collecting sneakers, and then that became a thing over time. And then I feel like it wasn't until I got to art school that I became a lot more conscious of like collecting things, because I used to see like I don't know, I remember one thing that was like pretty impressive was like the Ringling library, where it's just like whoa, it just had this insane collection of like art books, right?
Sure.
And then do you guys know Shawn Barber? So he used to teach at Ringling.
Oh, right. Did he go there too? Or
he did go there like late, I think in like the late 90s, I believe. And then he came back, and then he started teaching.
Okay.
So I managed to be friends, or I got to know him over the time that he was kind of there. Like it's kind of crazy because I didn't actually get the chance to have him as a teacher, because like all his classes would like fill up, because he was like super proactive with like the editorial circuit back in the day. So he's
was he? Okay.
Yeah, it was crazy, because he was like, I mean, you could name any magazine and he was like, he had stuff in it, and imagine like you're 18 and you're coming to art school, and you're just like, wait, what? Like yo, you're on all these like that's crazy. Like
yeah.
Like I remember the trippiest thing was like, I used to collect like hip hop magazines as a kid, and the Source magazine was like a big like magazine back in the day. Like,
yeah, for sure.
I believe it kind of faded over time, but like I guess XXL is like
you wanted those 5 mics.
yeah, like that was like a thing, right? But like
Illmatic.
But yeah, Shawn Barber, I believe, did the first and only illustrated cover. And I actually had it on my wall, and it was a portrait of DMX that he painted in acrylic. And mind you, like I didn't know it was him. Like it was just like I had it on my wall. Like I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like because I mean, yeah, I used to collect. I guess that's like kind of one thing as far as like my early exposure to just like art and illustrators was just like seeing illustrations in magazines. It was just like, oh, like this is a cool drawing, and then I kind of like take notes from that or try to emulate it or whatever. But I just remember he did the cover, and I was like, whoa, like this is crazy. Like I've never seen a painted cover before, and then next thing you know, I'm like, oh, wait, this guy's here? Like, what? Like,
that's awesome.
It's cool.
But yeah, he's amazing. I mean, and pretty much it's safe to say he's kind of like a mentor figure. Where it's like just from example, just seeing like his work ethic and like what he was doing at the time. and even his evolution over to like what he's doing now. It's just like, it was always like I don't know, just super inspirational, you know. But he's a solid dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was out here for a minute. Did you know him when he was out here?
Yeah, he because he actually yeah, it's crazy. So the first time I actually ever came to San Francisco, he was living here. I was still at Ringling at the time, and this is back when like concept art used to have like those workshops, right? And I believe, I don't know if it was their second and third workshop, but they had it here. And so this is 2000.
Yeah, I think it was their second one that they did it here. Yeah.
Okay, so this is 2005. It was like my last semester of school, and they actually sponsored a few Ringling folks to like they paid like, I guess, the tuition or the cost to go, but but you would have to buy your own plane ticket.
All right,
whatever. So yeah, I actually managed to come out and actually stay. It was like me and another fellow like artist student that we stayed at like Shawn's place for that what do you call, for that weekend. I think it was like a long weekend or whatever, but
I think so, yeah.
But it was crazy because it was like first time in San Francisco, and like literally at that moment I was like, whoa, like this, like I gotta move here, like. But it's also like the hype of like, I mean, this is like when concept art was like a big thing. And,
so many people moved out here because of
concept art. Well, there was that. I mean, even just the overall vibe of the Bay, it was like, I mean, there was just so much going on at that time, because there was that, but simultaneously like Upper Playground was like a big thing, and like White Walls
was still a big thing.
Like just the overall like creative vibe was just like like there was like something in the water out here. I was like, I want to be here or whatever. But yeah, anyway, going back to like, I believe at that time, like Shawn left teaching from Ringling, and then he moved out here, and so this is before he started doing tattoos. Like he was doing like these tattoo portraits, and then it just kind of like snowballed into tattooing. So he managed to like, you know, learn through other local kind of tattoo artists, and then that kind of snowballed into like his kind of direction that he's, you know, doing now. But so yeah, like so he was here back then, and then I moved. You know, fast forward to like 2009, I moved here for work, and I think I just missed him. Like I think he moved down to LA then. So
what kind of work?
So actually I moved here to work in social games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I used to do what do you call?
So like what do you call it? Like Farmville or
yeah. No. So yeah, I had a job offer to come work for Zynga, and this is like the pre-hype of it. Like this is before like anyone knew. Like literally I'd show up and be like, yeah, where do you work at? Like Zynga. And it's like, I don't know, what is that? Like, you know? And then like a year later, it was like, whoa, you work there? You know? So yeah, it's like I had no idea what I was like kind of signing up for. It's like I was living in New York at the time, and I was like in between jobs, and a friend actually had a job offer to work there, but we kind of have similar skill set. Like we went to the same art school, and he was just like, he's like, yeah, I know you like really like San Francisco. Like I could just like pass your info over if you want it. Like, you know, sure you just have to do an art test and whatnot. But yeah, managed to get a job offer working for them, and then I moved here in 2009, and then I was working in social games for I don't know, like almost 4 years.
Oh, okay. Social games is kind of where I took a turn because I was doing concept art right before social games got big. Okay. And then when I saw everybody starting to go that route, I was like, no, this ain't for me. So that's kind of what made me change from doing concept art to like full on fine art.
Yeah.
Because I just knew I didn't want to do that kind of work.
Well, okay. So with that said,
shots fired, Sergio? You guys about to fire?
I'm just shots.
I'm just kidding.
Wait, so you actually used to work as in concept art?
A little bit, yeah. I did environment design for a little startup company in San Rafael. It's no longer there.
Okay.
Yeah, it was actually we took Sid Mead's concepts and tried to build a 3D world out of them.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because the owner of the company was friends with Sid Mead from way back.
Wow.
So he was able to license his work and we were able to grab some of his illustrations and try and make them into actual 3D things. That's pretty dope.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's cool to meet him too. Yeah.
Oh, you got to meet him.
Yeah.
What? Wow. Yeah, he's like, the OG, man. Like,
he's
like
Blade Runner.
Yeah, like the original concept art. Like,
basically, yeah.
And I managed to get to see. So you get to see a lot of his originals in person.
I saw a few. Yeah,
that's so rad.
I
saw just randomly they had him at just a few random, like, I don't know, gouache that he had on display at the Whitney Museum in New York.
Oh wow!
Just so random. It was just like, wait, what? Like, what are these pieces doing here? You know, like,
yeah, no
but
kidding.
yeah, I mean, he's a solid artist, man. Like, that's really cool. You got to meet him. Did you get anything signed or get like a sketch or anything? Or
I wish. I wish I had more balls back then.
That's rad, man. But yeah, like actually, I wanted to.
A friend of mine that I used to work with. He got a signed print of one of his. The reproduction is really good because we actually had, for whatever reason, we had a really good printer in our office that we had.
Okay,
and so my friend had a print of his. And then so when Sid Mead came up to visit the office, he got it signed by him.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
He forgot to get one for you? Is he still your friend? Or?
Yeah.
Actually, with that said, actually we kind of wanted to get a little bit of your guys' backstory. I mean, obviously I know this is, but so, well, first off, like, how do you guys know each other?
We dated for a while.
Okay.
No, just kidding. My wife knew him, and we kind of got introduced through that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys known each other over the years, or like?
Yeah, probably about like 6
years.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So then, like, I guess at what point did you guys reach where it's like, all right, like, yeah, let's just do this kind of podcast thing, or?
It was just kind of, we'd always just been talking about art. Like when we would get together and hang out, we'd just talk about art, kind of like how we do.
We throw parties at my house a decent amount. And so Sergio would come, and then it would end up being where just me and Sergio at the end of the night, just talking for till like 4 or 5 in the morning about art. And it's like,
yeah.
And that's kind of what that was the usual routine.
Okay.
And would either be asleep or left by then. And, and then, he ended a relationship, and he was like, "Can I come over and get drunk?" I was like, "Yeah."
All right.
That's when we just kind of fell into like the conversation of, "Oh, we should start a podcast."
Okay.
And it was very like
kind of just organic, right?
Yeah, we had that conversation in December.
Oh,
and
wow.
then January we started the podcast.
Because it's pretty amazing that you guys managed to get so many interviews within the past year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even been a year yet, but you guys got like I literally was trying to go back. I was like, dang, how many? Like, I think I maybe listen to maybe a third of the episodes. But that's pretty rad. Like, so like
it was an idea that when you have ideas, they're just like, oh yeah, we should do that, and then never follow up on it.
Right.
We should actually just follow up.
No, that's great. Like, podcasts are amazing. I mean, it's like the.
That's also why we started, because we're both fans of podcasts.
Yeah. Okay. It's cool. And as far as like your backstory too, like, so did you guys go to art school out here in the Bay, or? I
did. Yeah, I went to the Academy of Art.
Cool. What time frame was that? Like
2001 to 2006.
Okay.
That was actually kind of a question I had for you. Like, was proximity to Ringling part of the reason you went, or like was that like the main draw? Because it kind of was for me. Like growing up here in the Bay Area, you'd always see commercials for the Academy of Art because they advertise the shit out of it around here.
Right.
So I was just like, well, that looks like a cool school. And then I went to visit. I was like, oh, they're doing awesome work here.
Okay.
So that's kind of what made me go in there. And then they had a lot of good federal grant money back then too. Yeah. So that's what made me start going there. So I was curious of like what drew you to Ringling originally.
Well, like I said, it goes back to like the my dad's side family being in Florida. So it was just, like I said, happenstance where it's like, well, I just want to go to art school, but I just stumbled upon this and I was like, oh, this looks cool.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, fortunately, it was actually a pretty good school, and even just
it sounds like it was a good time for you to go there too with the
Like, I mean, like I said, like I mean, even just like
teachers.
like I said, meeting Shawn, and then even like a lot of my peers that I managed to go to school with, and just even the connection afterwards, like a lot of just the alumni. I mean, just like naturally, everyone kind of just at least most of the folks that are kind of proactive with like their either career or art development, for the most part, everyone kind of keeps tabs on, like who's doing kind of what to some degree, and
exactly, yeah.
So there's like a lot of overlap of like connections there. But fortunately, yeah, it was like a pretty good school, and I mean the school. I can't really speak on it how it is now because I feel like it went through like a dramatic transformation. Like it just expanded,
right?
and I feel like the school at the time I was there, because I also went at the same time. I guess you were in school like 2001 to 2005.
Okay, yeah.
So the school was like super humble. Like like we didn't have like if you see it now, it's crazy. It's like a metropolis like they have like these mega, I don't know, story buildings and just like a fully decked out like.
That's almost the same thing that happened here with the academy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because as I was there, they were probably, when I first started, they probably had like 4 or 5 buildings, and then they just expanded
over time,
all over.
Yeah,
like
even
tentacles all over the city now.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, my sister ended up going there too. Like,
oh, there.
Yeah, she studied design there, but and I have a lot of friends that I worked with, like in social games that all went there. So there's like there's a lot of like I guess connects from that. For that school, but so yeah, I guess like with art school, like I said, it was just it was like kind of like the best option, so I kind of just went for it.
Right. Yeah.
But also, yeah, it was interesting because it was like one of the few schools I actually applied to as well. So I got in, and I was like, oh, cool. All right, let's just do this. And then I showed up, and I was like, whoa, like this is actually pretty amazing. I mean, just to be in a college format setting where like I'm like, wait, so I'm just gonna go to class and just draw. Like I'm just we're just gonna draw a figure today. Yeah. Okay. Like so that's 3 hours. And then the next class we're like, wait, so I'm just gonna do observational drawing? Like, wait, so this is what I'm in college for. Like this is crazy. You know, it's just like just having that kind of zeroed in focus. Like,
yeah,
oh, this is amazing, you know, because I mean, even, you know, in grade school I would take all the art classes I could take, and then I got to the point where I ended up retaking classes because I learned, I don't know, I just exhausted like whatever options we had, right? But then when we got to art school, I was like, oh well, there's like way more to learn, and just the overall exposure of like they had a solid library that, you know, I would literally just go to the library and just pick out books just to see like what was in it, and I would just kind of discover artists on my own, and it was kind of like a form of like you know how like DJs like do like crate digging.
Dig it in the crate.
Like that was like me for like art books. Where I was just like, oh dude, like
that's exactly how I would
literally go
too.
like shelf by shelf and just like pull each book out and just like anything that I had a hint of like interest of like, oh, who's this artist? And,
that's awesome.
But just imagine like
too, like the illustration, what are they called? Like illustration now? Like books from like the 80s. You go in there and look at the artists,
like the annuals and the catalogs. Like,
and then you go on Google and figure out what are they doing now? Are they still up to anything?
No, that was like one thing I was like communication arts, illustration now. I don't know.
The Society of Illustrators.
They had like their own books. So it was actually really cool, kind of just. But I just imagine though, like pre art school, like my worldview of like art was like, okay, comics, animation, and then like fine art, I guess, or whatever that means, right? Paintings. So you just have like a generic view of like what you could do with art. So even like when I went to art school,
Picasso book your mom might have or something.
Yeah, I was like, I just knew I wanted to go to art school, but I had no idea like, well, how am I going to make a living doing this? Like, well, I'll just figure it out later. But let me just go here. Then I get there and I'm like, wait, there's this whole world of like different things you could do as an image maker. Like I didn't even know what an illustrator was.
Yeah, neither did I.
And I was just like, what does that mean? And then you find out it was like, oh no, this was an actual occupation that people did.
Right.
And even like all the different like, you know, graphic design and like, you know, all the different like animators and all that, like just this whole realm of like all these things you could be and do as a creative that like it's like like the moment like I said I showed up I was like, oh no, I need to be here. Like this is crazy that like even have facilities kind of set up accordingly that this is like a legitimate degree, you know, because it's like I'm just fascinated by all this, like you know. So I pretty much when I showed up, I just like immersed myself in and just whatever my interest was, and just trying to learn as much as I could. But yeah, it was a great time for what it was, and like I said, it's probably changed a lot, and they even opened up their criteria, and then you know obviously with like development of like games and technology, like they expanded on that and stuff. But I was glad I got to be there for that time, because this is also this is that time like pre pre-access to like digital like art making, where like I still got to learn a lot of things hands-on, like a lot of like, you know, traditional mediums. And even though, like, you know, we did have digital classes where, you know, you got to learn like digital painting through Photoshop and all that.
Yeah.
Like it was nice to have like the half and half, to where it's like, you know, I still had like, because I mean, I didn't know how to paint going in there, right? But then I actually like got out of there with like, I know how to paint in like acrylic, oil, like all these other mediums. But at the same time, I know how to paint in like Photoshop and like Painter,
right?
You know, like all these. So it was like a nice like hybrid of like, I guess overall education as an image maker. But
yeah, the interesting thing about that for me too was, so I did all that too. It's almost the exact same experience that I had just over here at the academy, and the school was just playing catch up with digital. Like they just had to hire somebody. Like, you look like you know Photoshop, couldn't teach for us. So most of the Photoshop learning was through tutorials on concept.org.
Yeah. No, that was an interesting thing too, because it was like a lot of that was like brand new. And I remember even freshman year, like one of my dorm mates, like I know we had like this hall, like, you know, just like, I don't know, freshman class or whatever, but like somehow he had access to like the very first Wacom, but he had it in high school. And this is like before before it was like a regular thing. But we were all like all freaking out. We were like, what? Like, you could draw with that thing? Because this is back when you used to draw with a mouse, you know? Like,
MS Paint.
So like we used to freak out, and then like literally like the year later, you could actually order Wacoms. And like I remember when I first got the Wacom, like I stayed up all night just trying to figure it out. We were just like, what? Like, you know, like how do you paint digitally? Like, how does that work? And mind you, like I still don't even know how to paint in acrylic at that time. So it was just like a big like thing. But I mean, I guess like going back to art school, like, so did you have any like aspirations to kind of go to art school, or like what's your thoughts on?
I signed up to go to the academy and just didn't.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess how's your experience been, like, I guess kind of coming up like as a creator, like living in the Bay, because you're originally from the Bay, right? Like like I'm kind of curious to just hear like your backstory. And
I don't know, it's just kind of like I feel like I just learn as I go, but I don't know how like, I feel like most artists are kind of like that, but maybe I'm just dead wrong.
But I guess for example, like, so I'm assuming like in high school you used to take like art classes, right? And like, and probably like would kind of draw and paint on your own. And then like after that, like, was it one of those things where and being, like I said, in the Bay, and how like there was like a thriving kind of art kind of scene, like, were you exposed to that early on, or like how was that?
Like I would come and just kind of wander the city, because I lived in East Palo Alto after high school, and so I would like catch the Caltrains down and just figure things out. And I remember right when Upper Playground opened, I just randomly saw the Sam Flores like sign painted thing, and I was like, or actually I saw Revolt, who painted their rooftop.
Oh, cool. It's still up too.
And I was like, holy fuck, Revolt. So I walked over there and I was like, whoa, what is this painting? And so I walked in the place and I'm like, what is this place? And they were like, oh, we're Upper Playground. And that's kind of how I got exposed to the finer art of the Bay Area. You know, like, and then what's the robot spot that was?
Giant Robot.
Giant Robot was here too. And I like stumbled into that, and they had Barry McGee in there. And I was like, oh, Barry McGee. And I was more like graffiti style, like head. So there was a website called Art Crimes back in the day.
Yeah.
They used to have like an artist list, and they would have like, and I would just go on there and click like one artist and look at their graffiti. And I realized pretty early on that like the people whose would have like an actual name, I ended up like leaning towards their artwork. So it was like Alex Party was there, I remember that. And, and Dave Kinsey.
Wait, what time year was, I mean, like what time frame was that?
Maybe like 2002, 2003. This is, well, I was in high school at the time, but I was just always on Art Crimes, just kind of like, and then, you know, like internet was dial up, so you would just kind of sit there and wait, and then just like, so what I figured was like, if it had a name, it was kind of more artsy, so I would lean towards clicking on those names, and that was kind of like my experience, like kind of like the the beacon of like, oh, I kind of like this stuff. Like I should try to like, emulate that and figure out what they're doing there. There was like a lady named Tiffany Bozick who I was like, really into.
She did a lot of like the kind of nature oriented imagery and so yeah, I guess with that said, like because in some regards I had like a similar thing where like graffiti was like a lot of my early influence with like image making, because like I was saying when I was collecting the hip hop magazines, like
right, for sure.
Obviously the graph section, like they had the Graphlix section and the source, like I used to collect those, and
I
like
remember that.
And I always had an interest in, and I don't know, I kind of did my own thing like within Black Books, but since I lived in Japan, I couldn't just go and just do graph out there, because it was just like one of those things where like I mean they cracked down on like crime pretty
hard.
So it's just like one of those things where I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna risk, so I could only stay within the confines of like my sketchbook or whatever,
for sure.
But then when I came to the US and went to art school, then I feel like my kind of focus kind of just shifted once I learned about painters and all that. But like, how did you make the transition from like kind of graph oriented imagery to like your more figurative work?
I just kind of always did them. Like I still,
like you always drew characters and
I always drew characters. I always did graffiti, and I still kind of, I mean, I don't even do graffiti like illegally anymore, but it's still like a thing I just doodle like nonstop. They've kind of always coexisted together of like, I do this and I do that, and one thing kind of like is more mentally driven, and I developed that in a certain way, and then graffiti was kind of like the let me just be like reckless and silly and mindless with my creativity, and so
like even with like like as far as like anatomy and all that, is that something you kind of like learned on your own? And
so I remember I just I guess geek out and like I'll just like get obsessed with looking at something and just kind of like
kind of try to figure it out.
Figuring out how it acts the way it acts, and things like that. And I've always kind of been that way. And I haven't even really noticed that I did it till probably the last couple of years, where I realized other people don't do that. Like not artists related, but more like regular people don't look at things and think about like how light hits it and how things function.
Well, I mean, I think naturally, artists, you have a tendency to just break things down, so it's kind of like hand in hand, right? Like, but well, that's interesting, because like even with like it's like with your work, at least from what I've seen and familiar with, like did you kind of, was it one of those things where you started slowly weeding out kind of graph orientated imagery? Or
so there was always like this style of art that kind of with like figures and things where like like Sam Flores was like a huge, like I was always like, oh, I really like how he paints hands, and graffiti characters always had big hands and things like that.
Right,
so
right.
It was like if anyone painted, like I remember, I mean, like my brother had a Limp Bizkit album or something, and the artwork in there.
Oh yeah, with the guy going.
Yeah. And then like I would look through the catalog, and it was like someone drew people with big hands, so I would like redraw them and kind of like in this weird, in this almost graffiti style.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that was like a thing, because even I have like a lot of my early high school drawings that's like these super exaggerated anatomy with like super big feet or shoes, big hands, throwing up peace sign, or like like some type of like pointing, or like
for sure,
and then like a oversized like bobblehead, and like the bodies would just be like these I don't know
beans,
whatever, just like some weird, but that's interesting though, because like I said with looking at your work, it's because you had like a sense of like, definitely got a sense of like anatomy, and then even like the like rendition where like because you don't really see that in like kind of graph related art. So it's like where do you think that kind of initially came from, or like where were you looking at particular artists, or like was there artists that kind of pertain to more kind of not necessarily realistic, but kind of just more of a rendered kind of atomically correct look that kind of help kind of direct,
not
I guess, your direction? Or
because I don't know, I don't really have anyone that I could really pinpoint as like, it's weird because the people that inspired me to paint, they don't do what I do.
Yeah. I mean, like for example, like Sam Flores, right? Like his stuff is like super stylized.
Yeah. And so, like Barry McGee is like a huge influence of mine, you know.
Okay, yeah.
And,
yeah.
But he never
But he's like yeah, it's like the cartoon heads. Yeah. I mean, not cartoon heads, but you know, the stylized cartoon heads and the pattern driven stuff. So that's why I was kind of curious, like how did you end up going?
It was just kind of like, I don't know, like when I used to paint women, they used to have these like exaggerated bodies, but like I would really enjoy painting the face, or drawing the face or whatever. And so I would just always push myself to try to get like better and better and better. And the bodies ended up getting more and more subtler with how I was exaggerating them. And then it just kind of like over time became what it is. I don't know.
Okay. So it was like an organic thing that kind of just happened over time, right?
There wasn't anyone I looked towards as like, I mean, with Instagram, I'm always looking at art, but even, you know, like,
I guess I'm just trying to imagine for that time frame. Cause like I said, with the, at least from the stuff that I've seen in the early, I don't know, 2000s, from what the art that was being created out here, like I didn't really see, I don't know. It was like a mixed bag because like there was so many different styles and so many different and I don't know.
I was kind of like, I don't know, like I wasn't that internet savvy either. Like I would kind of like I was always, it always seemed like I was late to the party. Like I was on like I joined MySpace when everyone was leaving MySpace, and I joined Facebook when everyone was already on it for years. And I'm like, all right, I should probably do this. And then Instagram, even though I feel like I got in pretty early, at the time, all of my friends had it, and they were like, "Oh, you should do Instagram." And I'm like, I don't know why. And my wife, so I joined. Yeah, like when I started dating her, I think a little bit after that. I was doing graffiti at the time, so I would always, like when people had smartphones, I would have a flip phone, just because I would break them a lot. Doing like if a cop would roll up on me, I would break it because I had pictures on there or things like that.
I gotcha.
So I would never have, like I used to have like a Metro brick phone for a good amount of time.
That's funny.
And then my wife, she was showing me Instagram stuff, and she was like, "Oh, check out this artist." I was like, "Wow, they're amazing."
And, I mean, Instagram definitely changed the
almost the pace of growth of artists, I think.
For sure. Just the exposure of it. I mean, we used to get excited just over like, I mean, I remember just being a freshman and just in art school and just being like, just stumbling upon like a portfolio site that was just like, wait, what? Like, it's like, oh, this is just your whole collection, but it was just like advanced, you know.
For sure.
And I'm like 18, and I'm like, I'm still trying to figure things out, and like I don't know anything, and I'm like just stumbling. I don't know. I remember like a lot of the concept guys I would see, I'd just be like, what? Like this is crazy. Like,
yeah, then dudes like Coro would be like, "Hey, you people are looking at me. You should look at this guy instead."
Yeah,
like he would post stuff on concept.org, like look at Rockwell and Maxfield Parrish and all these other dudes that he loves.
I mean, that's like the one thing that, like I said, it was really, really amazing with like the art school experience was just like, I mean, I did spend a lot of time in the library, and like I said, it's like when you discovered, like one of my favorite classes that I had was like the history of like illustration.
Oh, you had a class like that too? Yeah, like, that was one of my favorite classes.
And it was just crazy and it was like solid. He did like a thorough kind of like it was like a sampler. It was like, okay, here's this artist, but here's like a couple pieces. But he would go all, like my teacher.
Did you guys have that fat blue book, the Walt Reed History Illustration book? There's this fat blue book. It was a history of American illustration. It started from like 1850 and went all the way up to like 1970.
Big boned,
I'm pretty sure it was around, but
BBW.
It doesn't stand out in my mind in regards to. I think it's just my teacher was like really.
Because what was cool about that book was that it have the artist, a little blurb about him, and then a little like quarter page picture of the book. Yeah, unless it was somebody really important like a Dean Cornwell or something, then it'd have like a full page spread. But I found so many artists through that. I'd find somebody like I never heard of him. Let me Google him, find out what he's up to, or what.
And that's kind of the magic behind Instagram. You can like not know about an artist, and then all of a sudden you'll see an artist and you're like, who is this person? Then you'll realize like all the other artists are already following them, and that this artist is amazing, and you, for some reason you had no clue they existed.
Right.
But that's the magic, and you're like, wow, there's so many.
But like that's what I'm saying. Like, so that, like, imagine
Instagram's my big blue book, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, that was like my experience, like first showing up to art school, where it's like you come across these books and you're like, these artists existed all this time, like everything like Gustav Klimt to like you see it was like super stylized, but you're like, wait, this goes back to like, I mean, I don't know the exact time frame of like his development as an artist, but it was just a trip. Like, there's this whole history of like this backlog of image makers and painters that existed all this time, but for whatever reason, and mind you, also pre-internet, so you didn't have like how else would I know of Gustav Klimt in high school?
Right.
Like, unless I had like an art teacher that was like super knowledgeable and super like I don't know, informative and helpful as far as like sharing, but like, yeah, it was just like I didn't have access. Like, I couldn't just go to like a store and just come across his book, right? It's
right. Well, even if like somebody had his calendar on the wall, you don't think, oh, that's like when you're that young, you don't think that's an artist that I should probably look up and know.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, well, even just the development as an image maker, like you go through stages of like, your awareness of like art, and because naturally, you, I mean, it's safe to say it's just like, I guess artists kind of just gravitate towards whatever was within reach, right? Like naturally comics, right? So we all have roots to like some aspect of like redrawn comic book characters or cartoons. I mean, especially like 80s kids, it's just like you can't help but have that attachment, right? But then as you evolve as an image maker, and then I don't know if it's necessarily like maturity or whatever, but you just like learn more, then you discover like, oh wait, there's this whole other realm and history of like image makers that probably like end up informing like your own process, and you kind of just, I don't know, you could just do like a deep dive in that
for sure. But and it's interesting too, because like if someone had a calendar of Clement or whatever, you it's almost like you wouldn't value it as much. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like the calendar form of like these amazing artists all of a sudden becomes something I'm not that into. But if I see something cool in a magazine or like even for like Gustav, the way I found him out was like some random movie where they like dived into like the fact that he created this artwork and that he had this mistress or whatever.
Oh, right.
It was like a Tom Hanks movie or something. I can't remember. And I was like, who is this person? And what he's like, I remember thinking it was awesome, but just that was like how I would find, like I would, like I can like always think, or not always, but I would think back on like how I would discover artists, and it would always be random, like the art section of a small movie where I'm like geeked out or about that, or like
it's like a lot of happenstance experiences, right? Where you just like you just come across it, and like I said, kind of same thing. Like pre-art school, it was just like my exposure to coming across artists was like I said, either comics or like I said, like in hip hop magazines, I would just randomly find just random illustrations, or I don't know if you guys remember I used to collect like lowrider magazines.
And
they had a section lowrider art. And it was like, oh my god, like this sucks, it's just like its own, like I actually even have drawings where I like used to draw like 64 like Impalas with like 1,000 spokes with just like old English, and then like these like stylized cholo chicks, with like the oh, that's so funny. I should probably bring that back somehow. But no, I have like a couple of those from back in high school. But that was like my worldview of just art, right? It's just like, well, how else are you gonna like learn and know about these other genres? And I felt like art school was like that moment for me where where it was just like I said, worldview just expanded dramatically. And then like I can only imagine trying to go to art school now, where it's like, I mean, like I said, with Instagram, it just opened the playing field where it's just like you just have access to just everything and anything, like at an instant, And so I feel like I was kind of glad that and fortunate that I kind of came up at the time I did, where it's like I don't know if that would have been way too much exposure at the time, just like discovering all these artists all at once versus like I felt like it was like a I don't know.
Like you had a chance to ramp up your
that's what I'm saying. I felt like I had to go through stages, and and then get to a point now where it's like, yeah, now I could actually just look up, folks. But
yeah.
But yeah, I guess going back to art school too, like when you attended art school,
Mm-hmm.
did you initially go with like an aim in mind where like, oh, I want to kind of pursue this?
I was so naive as like a first year student. Like I didn't even really understand the difference between animation and illustration.
Okay.
So my very first major, when I went in, I signed up to be an animation major.
Okay.
Not really knowing that like I actually really wanted to do illustration.
Okay.
So when I started doing the classes, then like my next semester, they started putting me in these classes where you have to do like animation cycles and that sort of stuff. Like, oh, that's not what I want to do. I'm gonna go paint or like draw and do stuff like that. So I kind of switched majors pretty quickly into that.
So I'm sorry, you switched majors into
into illustration.
Illustration, okay.
Yeah.
But did you go into illustration more so like as far as like, you just want to be more hands-on with making images, or
there's that. And then also my influences at the time, I looked at fantasy illustration, like people like Frazetta and Jeffrey Jones and those dudes.
Nice.
I was looking at that and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. And so I just started to drift more toward that direction. And then I think I discovered concept.org in my second year there.
Okay.
So then that expanded me into thinking about doing digital illustration, because that's kind of what was being big at the time, or getting big at the time.
Right.
So it just kind of just went from there. And
so was there a moment where you're like, okay, I want to be like a concept artist? Or
yeah, there definitely, I mean, I was always kind of trying to figure out where I was going to be, because my first painting class was a still life class. Okay. And even though I don't paint still lifes anymore, that's what made me really get into oil painting. It's like, oh, this is what I like to do.
I see. So I guess even with that said, like how, like, I mean, I feel like, now it's kind of, you're more in the realm of like, I guess, quote unquote fine art, right?
Yeah.
So like, at the time, like, I guess what made you, I guess, kind of go more illustration versus like fine art? Was it kind of just, I guess what you were saying with
I was always just kind of a foot in every aspect there. Like it was always, I think looking back at it, I was always just into trying to make the most exciting image for myself to do, and whether that fit in fine art or illustration or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, I just want to draw and paint cool shit. And so I'll just do it in whatever way and whatever realm influences me at the time. I'll just follow that path for a while.
Interesting.
So I would just go back and forth between I want to do a fine art painting or plein air painting or something like that. And then in my sketchbook, I'll draw some dragons and chicks with armor or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, and then the assignment that I had in school was its own separate thing as well.
Okay.
So I always just kind of dabbled
in different.
Yeah. I always just like kind of followed paths that meandered, and I never really had a real goal of being like, it wasn't until later on where I was going out of school and I thought, oh, well, how am I actually going to make money with art now?
Yeah.
And concept art looked at the time like the most viable way to go about it.
Right.
But I always had in the back of my head that I'll do fine art on the side. And I kind of looked at like Coro's career. Like, oh, he started with concept art. He just kind of fell into it.
Right.
But then he became like a director at Massive Black. Right. But he was always doing paintings on the side even back then.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'll go that route.
Yeah.
So for you kind of have like your feet in it seems like a lot of different like styles and kind of like you showed us like your patches that you do, and like it all seems like is that kind of like how your mind works? Do you end up like almost like do you have like sections where you're like, this kind of scratches that itch and this scratches this itch? Like
like well, I feel like I think one thing I realized over time that I guess I managed to end up I guess creating in two different avenues. And like one avenue is just the route of just like creating art in general, like whether it be drawing, painting, just creating an image. Like I feel like that interest has always been there since I was a kid, and then it just kind of evolved over time, and that's something that I feel like that interest is always going to be there, and I just naturally create within that realm, whatever that is. And then the other avenue is taking the art that I make, but turning them into some aspect of a product, you know, whether it be silk screen to like you know, patches, apparel, and like I mean even like my experience kind of working like right now, like my full-time gig is I do apparel design and print and pattern for a kid's clothing line. Like
that's cool.
I've I've worked in fashion overall for like 6 years. Like when I was in New York, I used to illustrate for Mark Echo.
Mark Echo was another guy that I would like geek out about his stuff when I was younger.
So you know, that's an interesting thing about that too, because he was like a brand, right?
Right. Yeah.
And like when I got in house, then I was just like, oh, I was like, well, wait, like this is like a whole like
machine.
I mean, because like it was like his company,
right?
But then like he would hire artists.
Right.
And then it was just kind of one of those things where like the artist in-house developed these images, but then he signed it.
Right.
Because it's like his company.
I think I was pretty like, I could tell, like I was like, oh, these are a bunch of artists. I never thought it was his work. I just thought he was like the brand.
But yeah, I mean, as a brand, I mean, yeah, same thing. It was like late 90s. I mean, obviously early 90s, late 90s was like the kind of like peak of that brand, right? Where it was just like, I mean, it was like, you know, as far as like streetwear, it was like one of the early major streetwear brands, but also they were like, I mean, really ahead of their time at that time, like as far as everything from like the technical application and techniques of like how they actually made their garment, where like, you know, it was like a big thing where you could like run your fingers across like the letters and it was like, oh man, it's like puff ink, or like, oh, it's like gel ink or whatever. But like, but then on top of that, you would have like these, you know, elaborate illustrative, kind of hip hop street related imagery that you wouldn't find anywhere else. I mean, at that time, right? So it was like as a like I said, as a creator, and also coming up as an artist that was influenced by graffiti and whatnot. It's just like it's natural. Like you'll see that brand, you're like, oh man, that's amazing. Like, like how do you do that? Or I want to do that, or I want to whatever. So, so yeah, my early aspirations was like, oh man, maybe I want to do like my own fashion line or something, or like whatever. And then like I said, when I went to art school, like my kind of interest kind of changed because, like I said, I was in college at a time when like, becoming a concept artist was like kind of like a hip thing, and I mean just the fact that you could actually make a living and have a salary drawing like cool monsters, just the perception of it was just like so appealing that like, oh, maybe I want to go that route, right? And then yeah, like over time, it just our opportunity presented myself to where like I ended up actually working for Echo. So then, so it's kind of crazy too, because this is like later 2000s, and even at the time I was like, wait, is this brand still around? Like, you know, but it was cool though, because it was like, I felt like it was like my first like actual like art job where I was an in-house like artist, where I'm actually getting paid to draw, right? You know, versus like I don't know, I guess like other art jobs or whatnot. But it was even just a trip. We were just like, oh man, like I didn't realize that you could be an artist and be in fashion. And then I found out, you know, and then I learned about like that whole realm of like, you know, artists that work within fashion. But from that experience, that kind of snowballed like other opportunities. Like, yeah, like I said, even when I moved here, like I said, I was working in social games, but then like after that time, like I was in between gigs, and then I got to connect working like at an Old Navy, like Old Navy's based out of here. So then I'd kind of come in and help like create imagery for kind of same thing what I'm doing now. It's like kids apparel, just like drawing like dinosaurs and destruction vehicles and like and it's kind of interesting in its own realm, because it's just like, I mean, how often do you ever actually look at clothes and fashion as a means of like inspiration or art? Right. I mean, it probably appeals to you more as a kid because you're just like, oh man, look at this dinosaur, this is crazy, right? But then like for the most part, it's kind of like an afterthought. You don't really even think about it. But at the same time, there's actually like in-house designers and artists actually sitting there creating stuff. And even like the majority of the images that I do make is actually like hands-on. Like I'm actually drawing a lot of the things by pen and ink, but I'm just prepping it up for like, production and like, the silkscreen format. And, but these are things that I've learned like over time. Like I was really fortunate. Like when in high school, I had access to like this design class, and it was actually kind of a trip because I was like 16 at the time, and I guess my teacher taught or had the option to learn silkscreen. So I learned silkscreen at like 16. So I was like, cool. I was like making my own T-shirts for like all my friends, back in the day, and I was just like, oh man, this is crazy because you learn like the technicality of like, oh, so I could take this drawing and like make it into this silkscreen format. And are you guys familiar with that process at all? Or
yeah, I taught myself a little bit after high school. I was like, oh, this looks like a thing.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just crazy. Like I
failed miserably, by the way. I mean, I burnt the image, but I didn't have like a good pressure washer to like rinse off the emulsion.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much have to have like a pretty, I don't know, it's kind of like an elaborate setup. But
I would print the images at like Kinko because I learned that you had to have, like, the ink had to be
like solid.
Like,
yeah. I mean, there's like obviously there's the technical aspect of it that we kind of get into.
I don't even know how I learned either because YouTube wasn't a thing.
But yeah, I mean, it kind of is relative to like the photography process, and and it's cool too because like my graphic design teacher at the time, he was also the photography teacher, so like I learned a lot from like I literally took his class like even
this
though
was in Japan.
Yeah, so this was in my high school that was on base in Japan.
Damn, that's awesome. Sounds like a great class.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy because it was like, I mean, I'm pretty sure probably nowadays there's probably even more crazy things that you have access to, like maybe 3D printers or something. But for at that time though, this is like 99, like 2000. I don't know. It was just like a solid class. It was just like, wait, I can make my own T-shirt. Like that's crazy, like. It's like, all right, so I kind of started from that, but I think even prior to that, I don't know, I was kind of like fascinated by the reproduction of art, of like how, like one of the big things I remember is like being in like 5th or 6th grade, and like finding like a copy machine and like taking my drawing to the copy machine. It's like, oh man, I can reproduce my drawings and like I can give my drawings to friends or whatever. It was like, I was just like so fascinated by that because it's, like friends would be like, oh, well, let me get that drawing. I'm like, nah, it's the only one I have. Like I can't I can't give you this or whatever. But then when I had a photocopy machine, I used to make like pamphlets, like literally like I'd take photocopies of like maybe 10 of my drawings and then like staple the corner. Like, here you go, man. Like
that's so funny. We did that too in school. Like people would take other people's sketchbooks and go to the there was a color copier that people knew about that was like the one that you can go to and use it for free. Some people would go and take other people's sketchbooks and make copies of it and just kind of hand them out.
No, it was like I was just like I said, so fascinated because like this is back when we used to have like the binders where you would have like the clear slip and then you put your drawings in. That's so exactly like hand out it to my friends, and then they would like kind of like it's kind of like a mini promotion, like getting my art out there or whatever. So funny.
Then when you pull the drawing out and you use pencil and the pencil stuck to the clear gun, you're like, oh
yeah, it kind of like sticks to the plastic or whatever. But yeah, I guess like I feel like from that moment it was just like the idea of like I said, reproducing my art and seeing how my art kind of translates into these other mediums. Like it kind of started from there, but then also like I said, growing up in Japan, I think just subconsciously, I would just kind of be exposed to a lot of just products that that always had illustrations on them, or to some degree, like, I mean, obviously like one big one's like Sanrio, right? Like, like Hello Kitty. Yeah. Like, so if you look at it from like the aspect of like an illustrator that's taking their art and applying them to products,
right?
Like it's amazing. I mean, even though you might not be into that content, but look at it for the aspect of like the production and the brand,
right?
It's like brilliant, and
for sure.
And like I said, I feel like subconsciously, like I've kind of maybe like take that in, and even when the way I make my images, like I I think about things like that where it's like, well, like how can I make one drawing but then apply it to all these different avenues and means, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of something I feel like I developed over time where, like, guess like even working in fashion, like I kind of like learn more of like the technical aspect. And then, I mean, even simultaneously, I don't know. I feel like even the entrepreneurial aspect, like I think was always my interest was always there from high school, like the idea of like making my own brand or like t-shirt thing. Even like I said, going back to like Mark Echo, you're just like, oh man, like I can make my own clothing line, like that's crazy. But
did you ever do iron-ons at all?
A little bit, yeah. It's just like quality I didn't really like. It was just kind of like cheap, but like so once I learned
wash it, and they would like ruin.
Yeah,
but I mean, it kind of had its own kind of style to it.
Yeah,
I mean, you could probably pull it off if you kind of do it right. But yeah, like so once I learned silkscreen, I was like, oh, like this is actually like a legit way.
Yeah, for sure.
To make shirts. So so like I feel like over time, as I was as I'm going through art school and I'm learning how to make imagery, like technically, like paint and so on. I always had that interest on the side where like the idea of making products. Like I remember like even part of my thesis senior year was like I had like a series of paintings that were like a particular theme, but simultaneously I had a section where like I made my own shirts and I produced like my very first like book. And this is back when and mind you, this is 2005, so we didn't have the access to like what we have now, where it's like you could just make a book anywhere. But I discovered that Cafe Press had a production, like a publishing option.
Okay.
And the only reason why I found that out was I was a big Ashley Wood fan back in the day.
Oh yeah,
and I mean I'm still a fan of his work, but he produced the book through Cafe Press. And I was like, wait, what? I was like,
I forgot about Cafe Press. Are they still around?
I think so. Okay. I mean, I actually haven't checked, but I just remember at the time it was like a big deal. I was like, wait, I could make my own book. Like, so that was like part of my thesis where, like I said, I had the paintings, but at the same time I had, I did a small run of shirts. And then I did a compilation of my sketchbook pages, and I was selling them at my senior show, like just like slanging it at the And then even at the time, I discovered that at Kinko's I could take my ink drawing. Like towards the end of my senior year, I got really into like pen and ink. So I was like taking those drawings, but then like I found out at Kinko's you could make these giant black and white printouts of your drawings that are like 4 by like 7 feet or whatever.
Oh, really?
So
that's all we wheat pasters do.
Yeah. So I used to like get my drawings and blow up and then like kind of paste them around like the campus, but use it as kind of like promo for like some of the shows and stuff. But I was at the same time it was kind of like promoting like like my art and just kind of getting my word out, my work out throughout campus or whatever. But it was just like I said, the fascination of like the reproduction aspect and in turning them into products. So so over time it's something that I'm like still interested in where like I in some regards I kind of have like a brand that I'm starting, and it's kind of like a slow development because I'm also doing this like outside of like my full-time gig, so it's like a slow and simultaneously doing art shows and like random kind of freelance things. So but ultimately, long term, the aim is to like keep developing as an image maker, and whether it be paintings, drawings, and then on the other side, like taking those things and seeing what other like the extent of where I could take, my product development, right?
For sure.
So, whether it be like t-shirts, and I also do like a lot of conventions, so I kind of set up things accordingly where like I make my own zines, I make my own t-shirts, patches. The new realm that I'm actually starting to get into that I kind of kept it on the low for a while, but hopefully
breaking news.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, so I'm
waiting to try exclusive.
I know, right? So I'm actually preparing for DesignerCon, which is next month in LA.
Okay.
And are you guys familiar with that convention at all?
A little bit.
So
this is like clothing design. Is that
what? No, it's so actually the convention. Yeah, the convention started initially from independent toy makers. Kind of just from all over, like either U.S. or like from Asia. So it's and this is also back at a time when like um, when there was that the first wave of like like vinyl toys and like Kid Robot. That was just like a phenomenon where it's like, whoa, like these kind of like indie art style toys. Like that had that big wave in like the early 2000s, but then it kind of like faded. But I guess I don't know when exactly DesignerCon started, but it kind of started off the strength of that, where you'd have these independent toy makers and they would kind of showcase their creations. But then over time, it just snowballed into like a bigger event. So toys is still a focus, but then they started bringing in independent creators. And yeah, I mean, just like if you sell like prints, like I don't know, yeah, kind of like a range of different, like anything from like well, I wouldn't say necessarily graph artists. I think there's like a few graph artists here and there, but kind of mostly like just independent creators that kind of just sell prints and whatnot. But then also like toy makers or whatever. But so I actually I shared a booth last year, and I was just like amazed. I was just like, whoa, this is actually a really cool event. Like,
nice.
I mean, granted, you also like I'm biased because I collect like stuff that's kind of relative to that,
right?
But to be in a place where these are all independent creators and they're just making what they want, and it's, but I mean, obviously it's like I said, rooted in toys, but the idea of like you could actually make your own toy, like that's crazy. Like
for sure.
Like where do you even start, right? It's like, I mean, obviously these days the access is a lot more accessible, and I feel like there's definitely a second wave that's happening with like independent I guess like toy makers, because like the access to like 3D printing and like the even just the access to even production houses, and there's like overlap with like 3D printing and production, and even like the I guess the interest in like resin casting, like that's like a current kind of trending thing that you start to see. But anyway, so I've always wanted to make toys. Like it's just, I mean, like I said, I've collected this stuff over time, but just the idea that like I actually make my own is like, yeah, I'm down, right? Yeah. But around the time of like the first wave of like Coro, I mean, it was just ridiculous, because I mean, I would hear stories about like I don't know, like it would cost like thousands of dollars to like make something, right? And then you'd have to either go through a company like Kid Robot or get sponsored, or it's like, even how do you even get like the in on that, right? It's like, it was just kind of like this club that I was just like, all right, well, I guess I'm just gonna watch from afar. And like the closest thing that you could probably get to that is like maybe customizing like toys, like the vinyl. I was saying like the monies, like there was like that whole phase,
right?
And then like
around paint on them.
Yeah, like 2005, 2006, when you could buy like a blank money and then you could just paint it, and like that was like its own kind of scene in its own right. But and it kind of just like faded. But outside of that, it's like, well, how else are you gonna make a toy unless you just, I don't know, carve it out of wood or find other means. But now it's like I said, with the access of all what's possible. I guess like within the past, like, I don't know, year or so, or actually going to that convention, like I started to discover like, oh wait, this is actually something that's within reach. So
that's awesome.
So long story short, I teamed up with like a 3D artist based in LA, and we were working on a design, like a few designs actually the past year that I've just been working on the low, and then I'm looking to debut them at DesignerCon next month.
That's awesome.
But it's crazy because like they're literally in production right now, so like fingers crossed that that they come through. But yeah, like that's like kind of like one avenue that I'm hoping to hopefully explore.
That's super cool, because I mean, you're obviously a collector of toys, and you probably have like an appreciation for it that, I mean, I don't. So
yeah.
So I'm assuming it's probably like a pretty big like thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like well, yeah. For one, I feel like it's it was like a milestone moment, because
like
it's just
bucket
like
list or something.
Yeah, well, it's just like I said, it goes back to like the realm of like production. It's like, because I mean, the way I'm looking at it, I mean, I don't know. Everyone has like their perception of like what they consider a toy, right? But ultimately, it's still like it's a 3-dimensional sculpture,
for sure,
right?
Exactly.
And it's still an art form. It still requires design. It still requires like some aspects of ingenuity, and like even like the design that went into like, you know, like the style that I chose. Like I specifically formatted it for the medium of production, you know. So it's like it's crazy how like technical and you know how it goes beyond like, and then you start to factor like colorways or like paint jobs or like how does that even work, right? But that's like a whole nother.
If you're gonna have parts that articulate and all that too, that's a whole
yeah. I mean, it gets like, you know, super technical, but it's just. But like I said, I'm looking at it still as like an art piece. It's still like it's still like the it's still I don't know. It's just like still like an extension of like me being a creator, right?
For sure.
And yeah, and I'm just amped because I'm just like, because it just like opened up like this whole another realm where it's like you're going from, you know, pushing like acrylic and oil paint, and it's like, okay, well, how do you make this form right and make it convincing and believable? But it's like, oh wait, you could actually make that dimensional thing. It's like, well, how does that work? How do you design for that? And then that opens up like a whole nother way of like, I don't know. I don't know. I guess just kind of like viewing things in just overall perspective. But but yeah, I don't know if that. I guess that was like a long answer to like kind of like dabbling in different things, but
for sure.
Yeah.
One thing that's kind of interesting is when we were kind of taking the tour around your house, you were showing us also like your ink drawings, and one thing that was cool. So you did these still lives, and I saw like an Outcast lyric. And you were like, oh yeah, like I'm putting in these, like you know, these things that I'm into, and like kind of myself into the painting that can like and you also mentioned that it with the idea that it might kind of connect with someone who also has like similar interest to you in a, like, you know, it's like almost like you have this
like a multi-audience, right?
Yeah.
It's like was from different genres.
Which I thought was interesting because you kind of have, like, the way you think about it is just different than I think about it. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Like that you kind of are using your interest as like a connector to multiple different audiences that might geek out on the same thing you will.
Yeah.
And
like I think that's definitely one thing. I think it's safe to say that's common in my work, I guess, across, you know, the content and mediums is like the well, I mean, for one, it's kind of like I feel like my work's just like the reflection of like my interest and how should I say, I mean, being that I have multi-interest and you know, as you see, like I have like a collection of different things, but at the same time, these collections also inform my art, right? So it's kind of nice in that regard to have like these multiple sources of influence, and it's like it's fun to take bits and pieces and then overlap, you know, to kind of like make something new or something I've never seen before, right? And it's just like how do you make something interesting, right? Where it's like I mean, especially being like I guess being an image. Oh no, sorry, I've been kind of overkill on the image maker line, but it's like, I mean, technically, I feel like that's kind of like what we are. Even though like you're a painter or a drawer, it's like you're still making the image as an end product, right? But as far as the means of being, I guess like a painter or a drawer, it's just it's interesting, like the idea of like themes within your work, right? And it's like, you know, the more you kind of keep tabs on the either particular scenes or what other artists do, like you start to realize and see kind of like reoccurring themes or different how should I say yeah, I guess just the common themes that you start, that's the kind of like not necessarily typical, but just something that's just like common, right? Where it's like it's like yeah, okay, skulls, like
you can as an artist trends and see where
yeah, like I don't know, like skulls, for example, like for whatever reason, skulls is a thing that you could find amongst like in all artists' works usually, right?
Correct.
Like,
Sure.
But at the same time, it's like, well, how do you even differentiate yourself, or how do you flip it? Like, how do you make it different, right? And and I feel like when it comes to I guess like at least for me, like when it comes to like making things, like sometimes I even kind of go into image making with that in mind, where it's like, well, how do I create something I haven't seen before? Being that I do dig and I do like I do kind of keep up or see what's going on in the scene, or like how do I don't know, like how do you present something in a different way but make it interesting, right? And even with like my interest, it's like it's fun for me to reference certain things that have like, I don't know, to some degree out of context. Kind of like what you're saying with the still lives, where it's like yeah, when I think of still lives, I'm so used to the typical display, like you know, like the fruit bowl, or like a fish on a platter,
for sure.
You know what I'm saying, with like I don't know, like a satin like table cover, right? You know, it's just like the things that you would expect to see when you think of still lives. It's like, all right, cool, like that's what,
don't forget a candle.
or something, maybe even a skull, right? Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. But it's like, how do you make it, like, I don't know, like I've never seen, like, say, I never seen rap lyrics on like ceramics before, like like why not, you know? Like, I mean, I don't know, I kind of get a kick out of that. Just like, it's like something different and something I haven't seen. So
for sure.
And in a way, like I feel like I kind of carry that with you know, with my art making, but yeah, I think a lot of that, like I said, kind of stems back to like yeah, I guess like my upbringing, where it's like, you know, I was just kind of exposed to so many different things and cultures and experiences that I feel it's the same way with like my art, where I just immerse myself with like, I don't know, I'm just a fan of creators and a fan of all types of creators, you know, whether it be like comic book artists or painters or illustrators. It's just like the all common tie is you're creating, right? And and especially when you start to nerd out over that stuff, and you kind of develop your own I don't know, like your knowledge for these things. It's like, it's kind of nice to kind of intermix certain things, like but
well, what I think gives you a good amount of freedom to do that is that looking at your work, I think your voice is pretty well defined. Like I can look at your work and see like a signature sort of way you do things in it. So it really lends itself to doing all sorts of different things. Like we were looking at your sketchbook full of heads and cars and stuff like that. And then now I'm looking at your paintings of like roses and other flowers and everything else you've shown us. I could still see there's like, oh yeah, that's Bagger43 style doing that. Sure. So it all fits all together. Like you can take it wherever you want, and because you've been doing it, you have your style down. I don't even know if it's that conscious for you to do that. It's just you've been doing it for long enough, but it just works that you can adapt it to so many different things now. It's just wherever you want to take it.
Yeah, it's like well, thanks for that. Thanks for that.
That's called a rant compliment.
Compli-rant.
Well, I mean, also, I mean, we all have like our own signature like thing, right? Like, I guess when you think of style, right? Like, like I remember that was like I always found that kind of like an interesting question that kind of you would ever hear over time, where it's like, well, how do you find your style, or how do you find?
Yeah.
But I'm like, we all have a style. I mean, we all have our own style, right? Like the way you write your signature is very unique to you, right? I mean, you can maybe emulate someone else, but for the most part, just the way you draw an A is how you draw an A, right? So it kind of carries into like how you paint. It's like,
exactly.
Like how you paint a face is going to be pretty specific. So the more you do it, the more your voice shows up, right? And I think with like with the range of my work, even though it's like multi different mediums, it's just innate, right? It's just like my signature for whatever reason. Like I just like, I'm drawn to like a particular like aesthetic, and then it kind of just carries over into like other things. And I'm pretty sure it's the same with you guys. Like if you guys jump mediums, that, you know, your voice will start to kind of like carry through, even though it's like maybe a medium that you're normally not like working in. But yeah, I guess like I guess a question for you guys. Like, well, actually, you know, one thing I meant to ask. I was looking through your work.
How dare you?
Well, hey, and you know what? I've noticed that's like the cat's line for like this show. You thought about making a shirt, like "How dare you?" like or like stickers or something. Like,
yeah,
it's a drinking game.
I was waiting to hear that. Showed up. Like yeah, I've noticed like the theme of like arrows and houses. Like, was that like part of a series, or like what was going on with that?
It's just narrative tools really that I just built in. They're kind of just like, I don't know, it ends up being a thing like I was doing them when I first started kind of like creating my artwork of always having a house in it.
Okay.
And like a painting, and I was like doing it not intentionally, like I just kind of did it, and then but the first show kind of like I did it in, I named it the painting Finding Home.
Okay.
And then like it was like a show I had multiple pieces in, and I had another piece called Getting Lost, and then I kind of like really enjoyed those two narratives and playing around with what those can mean.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do that, and then I was trying to figure out a way to kind of like express how someone might have gone through something like traumatic or something and kind of like carried on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was doing tally marks for a while, just like random area in the painting, just have like, you know, like the 4 dashes and then across to equal 5, kind of like, you know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Like how when people are like tallying, like, you know, like prisoners, marking like days of a year, or whatever. So I was doing that as kind of like this thing to mean that, and then randomly I just started adding arrows, kind of meaning the same thing, and it just kind of built on that idea of like I don't know, just trying to build a narrative of someone's life experience based on how they interact with these random objects in a painting. So if the house is being, you know, like if the figure is reacting to the house in a positive way or a negative way, it just tells you something about the figure and their experiences with what they would consider home. And then so if these arrows are crippling or whatever, or if they seem like they're not affecting them at all, it kind of tells you that they've either moved on from this pain or it affects them to this day or something like that. It's just kind of like these objects that are there to inform you of what the figure's life has gone through.
That's interesting.
And this, you know, and where they kind of are at that moment.
Interesting.
So,
is that something you still keep up with some of your newer work? Or
it happens a lot in my sketchbook. So like my sketchbook, and then I would say
put it into a lot of your paintings.
Yeah. I just did 2 paintings. They both have like a house in them.
Interesting.
I think the last one you did had a few arrows in it as well.
Oh yeah. I've been using arrows now as like in feet, kind of to like, just because I do these narratives about getting lost and finding home so much, so that the idea of like wanting to get lost or wanting to leave but not being allowed to, based off of this pain that kind of is forcing you to be there. And not only that, but like pulling away from that would be even more painful. It's kind of like a narrative I'm playing around with right now. So it'll just kind of play out itself. So I just kind of end up like, I don't know if it's like a graffiti reason why I just like end up because like the people graffiti wise that I would be into were always people that would just do like the same image over and over again.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I would always do that. Always draw like the same person over and over and over again, and like tweak it just a little bit. And so I kind of have like,
it's kind of a version of that, right?
Yeah, it's that version of, and I just build narrative based on these like obsessions to repeat these things.
Interesting. Yeah. No, that's actually one thing that I always yeah, I find it interesting with like the artists that are kind of like that, where like they kind of they have their thing and then they commit to it, and then it's like 20 versions of this thing, but it's just like different, I don't know, angles or whatever. It's just like, but it's interesting because it works from a brand standpoint where it's like immediately you see it and you're like, oh, that's that's so and so, but then at the same time it's like, you know, natural, yeah, I guess like that development as an artist, it's like I'm always kind of curious, like how does that work with like them, the like moving forward, you know, is that like is there like kind of like a level of content where it's like, okay, this is my thing, and this is actually getting me notoriety, so I'm just gonna stay with this, or like is there any desire to, like, you know, kind of evolve into like something else, or I don't know, it's what I always find really interesting with that, the kind of zero in focus on the repetitive theme or whatnot. But
I think if you're honestly searching for your voice as an artist, there's going to be a certain amount of restlessness to it. So I mean, like, because I do the painted roses thing, it's variation on a theme that I've done probably like 50 times at this point.
So when you say the painted roses, is it referring to because like one thing that
the nude females with the flower pattern.
Okay. So how did, that was actually leading to that. So how did that even come about? Like, how did you
do me next?
Yeah. like how did you get to that?
He's Jedi mind.
Because I mean, it's interesting because, you know, you're explaining, you know, your time in art school and then like your interest in concept art, right? And then like, so how did you make the leap from kind of having interest in going that route to kind of landing towards this, I guess, this particular style that you're in now?
Originally, it started from just an idea that I had, where I had models that were in front of either graffiti or old industrial, you know, you know, over in Berkeley, they have those near the train yard. They have those, you know, whatever they make out there, like cement mixing things or whatever out there. And
like construction yards or something?
Yeah. So I just had models in front of them. And so I stumbled across this technique in Photoshop called displacement maps.
Okay.
And so you can take anything like a Photoshop file, and what it will do is distort it to the black and white of the of that file.
Okay.
And so I did that with the backgrounds of these gnarly looking things that had a texture all over them, and I'd merge the figure in and out using that technique, the displacement map thing.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to do something different from there. And then there was a model that I came across that had all these roses tattooed on her back.
Oh, crazy.
And so we'd been talking about doing a photo session together. So I had her, and she brought this background with her that had the vintage rose pattern on it.
Okay.
So that's basically what I did. I took photos of the vintage rose pattern and photos of her and did that displacement map thing against her.
Okay.
And I just really liked how that came out.
Nice.
And so that's just, I did a small series with just her.
Okay.
And then from there, it just kind of expanded out. Like, what else could I do with this?
Yeah.
And I just been
kind
playing
of just
around with
it from that.
Yeah.
So, and then that's something that, and I feel like you still kind of carry in your work.
Yeah, for sure. And I've just been trying different ways to get away from it as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I get away from it in to kind of explore something new, or is it more like
exploring something new? Like, I do really like flowers as a theme, like both like actual flowers and flower patterns.
Okay.
I just like patterns in general.
Okay.
And so I've done different things with different types of patterns. Like I've designed my own patterns and put them into my paintings before. So I've just been trying to figure out different ways, or if there are other things like flowers I could latch onto as a different sort of
like a different way to maybe like depicted, or
or just not even using flowers.
Oh,
like, I don't know, using something else that I think is pretty or whatever.
Okay, that's interesting. And you work primarily in oils?
For the most part, yeah.
And you also work in oils recently, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there any particular reason why you guys chose that medium as a means of creating, or is it just something that you kind of got? Because recently you kind of just started shifting into that, right?
Yeah, I was doing mixed medium stuff for a while, just like I don't know.
That's actually the first time I've come across your work. I remember I don't know what year it was, but I do recall seeing him at Destruct like way back in a day.
Oh, Destructure?
Yeah, Destructure. Wow. Like, so I mean, and that was a while ago because it's not even around anymore.
Yeah.
But
last time I showed with them, I think it was like 8 years ago, 8 years ago, probably.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I probably have photos somewhere of your work.
Oh wow.
Like just because I love checking out like shows, but I do remember specifically seeing your work there, and then yeah, it's just interesting because like I remember like seeing the pieces and it was just like that was the thing that I found interesting was like the mixed media aspect of it because like I love looking at like original work and just really trying to figure out like, okay, well, like did they use this medium, like did they make it this way, and it was interesting seeing yours because it had that kind of multimedia aspect where it's like okay, cool, like I could kind of see like acrylic here and then it looks like maybe color pencil and then maybe like but
I that was all born from just me not being a trained artist. So I, when you're a kid, you have a pencil. So I always lean towards that. And then I kind of just built on that and figured out like, oh, I could use this to do that and this to do this. And so I would get like cheap house paint. If that was like another thing, like you can always like find free house paint anywhere. And that's what I would use for stuff. And then, but what ended up happening is like that style kind of limited certain things I wanted to do artistically.
Okay.
And so after kind of like thinking about it, I was like, oh, well, like oil will allow me to do these things that I've been wanting to do, but just never figured out how I could like execute these ideas with this style. I've kind of like,
kind of wanted to achieve, I guess.
Yeah. And I kind of like built it like I don't know, it's like one of those Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that island where all the toys, like the misfit toys or something, like just Frankenstein, these, just like, I was just a really poor kid. So it was like the free paint and I always have pencils and like.
I mean, that's like the best though. Like when it comes to like just working with what you have.
Yeah.
And just seeing like the results of it.
For sure.
I mean, because like we all had that moment where we just like, well, this is all I have, so I'm just gonna work with this. And then over time, you learn more about different mediums and
for sure
kind of expand accordingly. But I always find like the mixed media stuff like the kind of like the funnest things to try to break down. Because like when you see like one medium, you're like, okay, so this is ink,
right?
And you're like, oh, okay, it's like kind of like what went into it. But then, but when there's the overlap, then you're just like, wait, like what? Well, how did you make that? Because certain mediums make certain marks and certain textures, right? But then when you overlap and you mix it, then it turns into a thing where it's like, wait, there's obviously stages involved. So how did you like? What did you do first? And then like I don't know. That's like one thing I always kind of like enjoyed. Like I guess with certain kind of mixed media artists, it was just like it's just like just kind of the I don't know. Yeah, just examining like
deconstruct.
There you go. That's the word I was looking for. Like
coming across Coro sketchbooks back in the day. Like, how the hell did he do that? And then he finally did a tutorial. It's like, well, at least I know how to do it. I still can't do it, but at least I know how he does it.
Have you met Coro?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He used to live up here.
Back in the day, like he's
I knew him online for years before I actually met him in person.
Through the concept art.
Through concept.org, and because he went to the Academy of Art as well a few years before I did. So
nice. He's. I mean, I just remember when his sketchbook like pages that he used to scan and post on concept art, like, which is so amazing because he pushed the
crazy marker ink technique that.
Because it was like there was nothing else like it, right? It was just like he was just like utilizing like kind of the same thing. We're just utilizing what he had, and but also had like the aspect of like experimentation where he's just like, they were just gnarly though. Like I remember like page after page, like the same workshop that I was talking about in 2005 when I came out here. Like I believe he had his sketchbook out.
I'm sure, yeah.
And we was like looking through it, and I was just like, this is freaking amazing, man. Like, and yeah, and just Coro in general. I mean, he's just an overall amazing artist, man. Like,
no, it's ridiculous.
Just like watching his like, I remember seeing like this back on like when White Walls was around. I remember he had like a solo show and just seeing like
I remember that.
Just this range of like oil paintings and like he did some like these giant like portraits with like the pixelated.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
But simultaneously, he was still like.
And then you have like a still life of a bong like, right next to it.
Yeah, but like just the full range, and then just kind of like the mixed media and like I don't know, just amazing. Like even like the new stuff he's been kind of doing like
those giant tree paintings.
Yeah, like the kind of more nature, kind of like tree. I don't know, like super detailed, like so crazy.
Yeah. That's insane.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like go on and on about artists, man. Like I said, like I was like like I'm a nerd over this Jack, man. Like I think that's like one thing that's really cool with I mean that's one thing that I think like that like the love of the Bay is that aspect where like I was drawn to this place because of like just the overall energy and vibe that was happening, and then to kind of like move here and then yeah, over time managed to like befriend and get to meet a lot of these people that I used to like just nerd over like back in the day, and yeah, it's like a trip, but yeah, like I said, I mean, I could go. You could just pick an artist and we could just go on. Like, dude, that's cool, man. So like, I'm curious, like with you pursuing oil, is there a particular reason like that became like a medium of choice, or is...
Well, it's like I said earlier. As soon as I started working with it, I was like, "Yeah, this is the medium that I love," and it's all aspects of it. I like the handling properties of it, just all the inherent properties that it has, where you can. It's a slow drying time. The depth of it that you could achieve with it. There's it just has its own like natural quality to it that no other medium really replicates well.
Right.
Like
shots fired at acrylic paint.
Yeah. Oh no, there's definitely a big. I mean, there's some amazing stuff I've seen folks do with acrylic, but like I always kind of think of like the term of like I don't know. I guess like using like resolution, where it's like the way you can handle oil and the way that oil could make it like make form. It's just for whatever reason the way it breaks down the pigment, it just achieves this level of like realism that you just really can't achieve. I mean, you can, I'm pretty sure, if I don't know, depending on your skill set, right? But like with other mediums, but I don't know, just oil, like I mean, you could just do a certain mark and you're just like, whoa, that really looks like a curve of like a skull or something or whatever. But yeah, like oil, like because I have my moments where I dabble in oil and I love the medium, but I think the only reason when I don't know, like if I had more time, like if I had a allotted amount of time, like I'd probably immerse myself with the medium a bit more. But it's just like the setup, it's like kind of prepping up like your palette and then cleaning up the brushes and all that. It's just like it's kind of tougher with at least in my current schedule where I like dealing with the full-time gig. And just trying to get work done. And it's actually part of the reason why a lot of the mediums that I have been working in the past few years, whether it be ink or gouache, it's more of a response to this antsiness to just create, but also create something fast. So it's just like, yeah, like gouache is like an interesting medium because yeah, it's crazy because surprisingly, I wasn't introduced to gouache at all at Ringling. There wasn't.
No.
I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I was introduced to everything else. But then gouache was just not like like none of my teachers used it. I didn't have any demos with the medium, and it was just like a medium that I would see at the art store, but I'd be like, I don't know, like like okay, like I mean, I think I bought like a cheap pack. but it didn't really do anything for me. So then I kind of left it alone. But then it's just kind of funny that it's like it's been one of the main mediums I've been using the past like year. But I think it's also what do you call? I mean, well, I mean, for one, like acrylic wash, right? Like it's. I feel
that's what I'm really into.
I feel like that's like a newer medium, right?
Yeah,
because like that wasn't really around.
I think it came out probably late in my art school career. So
okay.
Because it wasn't a thing.
Like, I mean, I know, like, you know, obviously Winsor Newton stuff has been around, but for whatever reason, that particular brand, well, for one, just the colors alone, like the full spectrum of like the breakdown of like the colors that are available, it's just amazing because you could just buy like a full spectrum and just paint right out the tube.
That's true.
Without even having to deal with like mixing. It's just like so direct, you know. And I also mix it with sometimes with like Winsor Newton, and you get like some interesting.
Oh, is that right?
Kind of effects. But yeah, no, like I said, it was amazing. It's just the time involved, man. Like
that makes sense. Yeah, the cleanup and all that.
Yeah, gouache is awesome. I mean, it's one of those mediums where when I see it, I'm like, ooh, like the color about gouache is. Oh, like when I go to a gallery and I see a painting, I'm like, oh, like it randomly will attract me to that painting because of the colors, and it is amazing. Is that a big reason why you choose, or is it?
I think it's a combination of things. Like, I have a tendency to just buy, like starter packs of like paint. If it's something that I'm not familiar with, just
that makes sense.
Experiment. I'm just fascinated with the range of. I'm just fascinated by mediums in general because like every medium has its pros and cons
for sure.
And anytime I see a new one where it's like, oh, what does this do? You know, because like yeah, why not, right? So like randomly, I just had like a pack of like a starter gouache set, and I just started painting in it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like dries fast, and like it's interesting because also simultaneously I've been doing well, for one, like over time I've been doing like time lapse videos through Instagram. Like it started off with like the pen and ink stuff, and like it was like it was just kind of like happenstance where it's like I got a new iPhone and I was like, oh wait, you have a time lapse option on this? Because I remember back then, like I'd have to try to set up a like a full production of like, oh, I want to do a time lapse, but I'm like, oh, I gotta find someone to film it, and then I gotta set up the shot, and then I gotta edit it, and then I'm gonna post it, and then it's like just full production just to do like a 20-second clip, right? But then when I discovered it on the iPhone, I was like, no way. I was like, wait, they do all this and compile it for you like on the spot. And then so I started messing around with that with ink just because like I don't know, I just thought it was cool. It was like, oh, because you actually get to see like, oh, that's how I draw, you know, because like you're not aware, you're not conscious of like what you look like when you're doing your thing. You just do it, but then to see it recorded,
I know
like,
I look super cool when I do it.
I bet.
Know.
Apparently, apparently, I look like an L7 weenie.
That's what they say. I don't know.
Oh, is that an inside joke? I don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
How dare you?
Told you, IJPH.
All right. Well,
okay.
I'll ask later about that. Anyway, so I started with the time lapse videos with the ink stuff, and I feel like it was like a progression where it's just like, okay, well, like, you know, I still enjoy painting, and I wanted to show that like I could do like paint, you know. And when I started messing with gouache, I was like, oh, cool, this is like super fast drawing, like it's something I could just knock out quick. So I just started out literally with just studies of either like birds or dogs, just as like a starting point.
Yeah.
And then and like I said, it just kind of just snowballed where I was like, oh, this is great. It's like it's something I can knock out fast, and you know, do in between projects or in between work, and still kind of fulfill that itch to create, you know,
right?
But also still paint, you know. It's like, I don't know, it's just like and even just like I said, experimenting with that on like different surfaces, like you start to find like new ways to kind of like express with the medium, whether it be like, because you know, if you use gouache on like wood panel versus like watercolor paper, it's like a whole different reaction, a whole different look. Like because because obviously the medium's like floating on the wood surface versus like a textured watercolor. You just get like you drag like a brush stroke, and it's like all of a sudden you have like a variant of gradients, and especially you start mixing colors, you just
I've never tried it on Yupo paper, but that's probably a whole other beast.
What is that?
You know that it's almost like a plastic paper.
Oh, okay. Kind of like vellum or something?
Sort of, yeah. I forget who makes it, but yeah, it's like I think it's like a polyester paper or something weird like that.
It's like semi-transparent.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if I said that on the mic at all.
Like you talked off to the side. I was like,
semi-transparent. Yeah.
But it has zero absorption. So I've seen people use it with watercolor.
Oh, so it kind of has like probably like a watery look, right? Like
yeah, it makes these weird, crazy pools on it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. So I've never tried it with gouache, but I've seen it with watercolor, and it makes these crazy looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to play with gouache. I just bought some.
Yeah.
I need to use them. I've been trying to figure out how to go, because I do want to continue doing oil paintings, but I've been in my sketchbook a lot. I've been trying to figure out how to kind of do like a mixed medium thing again, but not the same. And I think gouache is like is going to be my saving grace for figuring it out. But
yeah.
Did you guys ever mess around with like acrylic much?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah,
I did a lot in school.
Okay.
I didn't love it.
Yeah. It's interesting with acrylic because,
I mean, it's definitely got its advantages, but
yeah. Like I think I was like, actually a lot of my paint, I would kind of do like a hybrid, like half. Like, have you ever seen like some of my older work? That was like a lot more. Actually, I'm curious. Like, how far back have you guys kind of like, have you guys seen any of my stuff from like, I don't know, like, I guess stuff that's on my website. It's like a lot of my older.
Ooh, I don't know if
okay. No,
I didn't go on your website.
Okay.
I've scrolled down pretty deep.
Okay, because like on my Instagram, it's more like if you go far back, you're probably just gonna see mostly like ink stuff and like, obviously like like the gouache because it's more newer stuff, and then but here and there I would kind of like throw in like Throwback Thursday, like my older pieces. But
is that right?
But I don't know, like I feel like a lot of my early work like coming out of school was the school I was at, I feel like they focused a lot on like the finished image, like just kind of like I mean, like I said, I studied illustration, so a lot of times the aim of our portfolio was to have like a collection of just like these kind of solid images that either had some type of narrative or like just kind of like a more developed image versus just like a portrait, so a lot of my work that I created back then was like heavy on that note, where it's like every piece was like involved, where it's like multi-characters, like I don't know, some type of narrative, like semi-surreal, like just kind of a lot more involved than I think some of my newer stuff now. But back then I was heavy into using acrylic and oil, like kind of like half and half.
Okay, like acrylic base and oil on top.
Yeah, like acrylic base, and then like I don't know, I'll do kind of mixed media in a way where it's like because acrylic has a certain texture. Like I'd probably use it to make like I don't know, like it's like a texture surface versus like if I wanted like the skin tone to be super smooth, then I would use like oil.
That makes sense.
So I used to use it like heavy back in the day with, like I said, going back and forth between the two, and then I feel like when I got to gouache, I feel like it just became more natural just to use it because I was so accustomed to how acrylic works.
Okay,
just like the because it's the same. I mean, practically
it has a similar feel, especially the acrylic gouache.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, it leans more towards acrylic than gouache, right? Because gouache is I lean more into the acrylic because of like I guess regular gouache, at least Winsor Newton, it has like the reactive aspect of it where it's like because if it dries but then you add water and then you can kind of rework it. Versus like acrylic gouache. Yeah, I think it just dries like straight up. But
I think basically regular gouache is the medium that they use, like the actual stuff they put the pigment in. It's basically the same as watercolor. They just add stuff to it to make it more opaque.
Okay.
Whereas acrylic gouache, the medium that they put in is the acrylic stuff. It's the same stuff they use for acrylic. That's why it dries permanently.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. To jump subject because I know we can probably just.
Yeah, we're like way past 2 hours at this point.
I'm sorry. I'm like, so are you full time like painting? Is that your thing? Like,
pretty much, yeah.
I mean, cheers, man. That's like the dream, man. Like, wow, okay. Well, cheers to that. Like,
I mean, he sells heroin on the side, but
okay,
slanging frames.
Well, that's cool, man. How long has that been going on? Like,
well, I mean, I get a big help from living at home with my folks. So,
okay.
So that's the main reason. But yeah, I've been doing that since 2010.
Okay, and is as far as like the art you make, do you kind of gear a lot of your work more towards galleries?
Yeah, at the moment for sure. Yeah. But I don't know. I've kind of shifted my attitude about that in more recent times.
Okay.
Just because I feel like there's just so many people I've talked to at this point.
On like podcasts and stuff?
Especially on podcasts.
Well, are you saying like
everybody's got their own, like
just
everyone's piecing it together. Like almost nobody I know is painting or just selling gallery work and making their living off of that.
Right.
Like even I was talking to Alex Konevsky yesterday at this thing he was doing in Carmel, and even he was like, well, yeah, Dolby Chadwick Gallery, the place he's doing the show at.
He has a show up right now?
Next week it comes out.
Nice.
So even he was talking about it, and he was like, yeah, this gallery, Dolby Chadwick, is the only gallery that really sells my work consistently.
I see.
So even if Alex Konevsky has a hard time with galleries, it's like,
yeah. It's just an interesting. I don't know. I mean, just the climate with galleries is just so interesting right now because of like obviously social media and like the access to like direct to, either the customer or client. It's so crazy because I mean back in the day it was just like you had to go through like, I don't know, the formalities of like approaching a gallery, or even, I don't know, like the gallery being interested and even being like appropriated towards whatever,
right?
But yeah, it's just crazy. Like I say, obviously with like Instagram, you could just post art and someone could just hit you up and like, can I just buy that? And you're like, sure.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting. So I guess like, yeah, with that said, well,
I think you're in a good position because your output is so diverse that you have different ways of selling your work. So you're probably in a better position than just going for galleries.
Yeah, it's interesting with that because I always kind of wonder about that too because, I mean, to some degree, I feel like I'm all over the place.
Yeah,
but at the same time,
But I almost feel like at this point, you kind of have to be all over the place.
Yeah, it is interesting though. With that said, because it's like when you're dealing with like creating, but also like the means of like income, right? And the like the return off of like, like your efforts. It's like, it's interesting. Like I mean, for what we just have, way more access to things, right? And like the means to like make things happen. It's like, I mean, a lot of it's like, all available. Like say if you wanted to make prints, you could just make it happen and just put it out. Right.
Right.
And then even like with the gallery format, it's, I mean, I don't know. I've always been fascinated by that model where it's like, like the 50% split and like. Even,
have you listened to The Harsh Truth with the owner of ThinkSpace?
Yes. That Andrew. That was actually a pretty good episode. And
it was.
And like I said, that's actually one of the guys I showed it way back. But like I said, it was also like the back room, so it was still like, like
sure.
But. Yeah, no, he brought up a lot of good points, and it's cool that he kind of addressed that too, of like the deal with like it's so funny. I literally just listened to it like last week,
nice.
But like, but yeah, he brought up the point of like, how with artists, it's like, yeah, if you have a strong following and you have a strong like support, like going to a gallery that might have like a lesser fan base, like in some regards you're probably helping them out, right?
Right.
So then it's kind of like, well, what's the in some aspects, what's the point? But even like the 50% cut's always like a tricky thing because, like what makes it worth it is if the gallery, really shows up and does their part as far as like helping get the word out, promoting it to the right clientele, like showcasing it to the their existing clientele, and then also like I mean, just really doing their part, as far as like kind of showing up and even like taking care of the work and dealing with like post sales
right.
or like sales as far as like getting the work to the client and such. But I mean, yeah, it's just so crazy when you factor like I said, like that 50% split, because it's like, I mean, just basic math, right? Where it's like you have a sellout show,
right,
and you end up making like 50K, but you're gonna give 25K
right
to like this gallery, but at the same time, like how close are you to even the person that's running the gallery?
Right.
It's like who would you give half your money to? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like 25K, like to someone that's just,
for sure.
I mean, don't get me wrong, like,
and maybe if they from the get-go were like building you up and like kind of, that would make sense. But if it's something where you just have this huge following and no matter where you go, you're selling out a show, it's like, well, then what's the point of the gallery then?
Yeah, like, no, I mean, like, I feel like I think the gallery, it's still, mind you, I'm just speaking off my, I don't know, what I think. But I mean, I feel like it's, galleries are still important in the sense of like the I don't know. I mean,
as far as art being seen in real life.
Well, it's just the focus of the presentation of the work, right? Like you have a dedicated space where people show up,
right?
And we're here to see art, right? We're here to see the work in person, and on the galleries end, like, they come through and they do their best to do that, right? But also, I mean, like I say, it's still like a business in its own right too. So it's like, they still got bills to pay, and they still got, so it makes sense, like that's where their cut's going. And especially like in a like a mega city like New York or LA, like it's like, yeah, it makes sense that like, well, like they would kind of want that split. But it's just so interesting these days where it's like the idea of like even like pop-up things where it's like, oh wait, I could rent out a spot for like a weekend,
right?
And then I could just set up my show, and if I have a following, then hopefully folks would show up, right?
Right.
I mean, for example, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Just as an, well,
but that's also a tricky thing because, like, say if I have like if you have 100,000 followers on Instagram, you're still like assuming that a good chunk of them are in the city that you are living in.
And then right.
Or showing at, and
right.
I mean, you would have to probably figure out the statistics about that. Like, most of my followers are in New York, and then so I should probably, if I'm in a rent out space, I should probably be in that area.
Yeah.
And then roughly where in that, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's so many. I mean, there's like so many variables, right?
But we that's the other thing is we sell art on Instagram, right? You have the option,
right?
That's kind of how Instagram, I think, is like. I would never try to use Instagram to sell, to like create a show and promote it through there. I mean, I will promote it through there, but I wouldn't. I don't know if it would work as well as like. I don't know if it'd be that great of a tool.
I know it's like so. Yeah, it's so interesting because it's. I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, because like, yeah, I mean, like, especially with paintings, for example, like in the like large paintings, like it's like these are things it's like, I don't know. I recommend seeing in person. Like, it's like it's like to just buy a painting off of an Instagram post. Like, you're gonna drop 5K off of just like, oh, I like this. All right, but there is instances where people do that, right? So it's just like, okay, like.
You said doo-doo, by the way.
Yeah, so whatever. Can you edit that out? But yeah, I don't know. I feel like if anything, it's just interesting times right now where I'm just kind of curious, like how things are going to be moving forward with the gallery circuit, and because I feel like there's always going to be galleries, right? And they are important. Like I feel like they do come in and like play their part, but it is interesting when you have like the direct access to,
for sure,
to people that that just want to buy the painting straight up from you, and even when you I don't know, like,
and it's even if you think about it, like for instance, like movies, right? Like you used to consume watching a movie in a theater,
Yeah.
And so that has changed within the last couple of years. And now the theater kind of plays a role of only limiting it to like box office hits, and theaters are kind of, so it goes like, does that model change for art now? Like, because people consume most art on Instagram, do like galleries only do the box office hits, like the artist that they know will sell out? And then if that is the case, then why would the artist give 50% to a gallery that only works with artists? I don't know. It's like a,
I mean, I think it's situational. I mean, because I feel like, I mean, you could just kind of pay attention to certain galleries and watch just how they showcase, right? It's like it's like naturally, you know, group shows make sense because you're gonna bring in a bigger draw, and it's just more exposure because each of the artists in the show are gonna promote it, right? It's just like, it's just naturally that model just works. But then to do a solo show, that's like, you know, like, I mean, that's kind of a risk for most galleries because they're just like, is this gonna move? Like, you know, versus like an artist that has like a, you know, like a bigger note. I don't know, just like a more well-known artist that's like, okay, this guy definitely sells, so we're gonna try to get this guy and we're gonna give him a solo show
for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely an interesting thing to think about. Like yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's an ongoing. For sure. It's like we're in it right now, so it's kind of like. And speaking of which, I got to show up right now. Like, You guys check it out after this. If
plug your stuff.
If you guys have some time, but
where's that at? Is that at 1 a.m.?
Yeah,
I just saw.
Yeah,
that on someone's story. I was like, oh, he's got a piece up right now.
Oh no, like a full show.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm in it right now because, like, oh, sorry for speaking too loud, but no, the show's up right now. It's up until November 9th.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it'd be nice if you guys could check it out because
sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like with this collection of work, I feel like you should see in person due to the fact that it's like a lot of with like the landscape stuff. It's as best as I can take photos of it, it's still one of those things where I recommend seeing it in person because there's just, I mean, resolution wise, it's just like, you know, like you get to see it right there, right?
For sure. Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, I have a collection of roughly like 30 pieces in the show.
Oh wow!
So, check it out if you if you guys get the chance.
The whole goddamn show.
Yeah. I mean, hence like, you know, why my living room's a little bit more open because normally I have like work kind of just like piled up and just lined up, you know.
For sure.
We have the bad timing of always missing that.
But no, you guys can still see it. So I think the gallery's open till like till 6 today. So you guys got some time. But yeah, I guess also with galleries, like, do you partake in shows much these days, or?
Yeah, I've slowed down a bit just because I'm figuring some stuff out.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily need to show. I mean, I make money not from art pretty much. Like, I mean, I make sales here and there, but what
do you do as your day job? If you don't mind asking.
I don't really.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's just a miserable. It's nothing artistic. It's literally just like a physical job that pays my bills.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, it's interesting too, because like one thing that I mean, I don't know, just as a creator, it's like it's like the constant like struggle of like, okay, we got to eat at the end of the day,
right?
Right. So it's like, okay, what are the means of generating income so that I can eat and live, right? So like whether it be like a job and it's interesting, even just being like a creative, because it's like, well, for one, there's only so many creative jobs to go around in general. So like, you know, like, I mean, you still got to eat. So yeah, I mean, getting a job, I mean, whatever works, man, you know, and then it's just the hustle outside of that. That's just like and like, you know, what I was saying is like, you know, like the ultimate goals. Well, I mean, at least for me, it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, I just want to be doing my own thing and
for sure.
And just developing further as a maker. And, but in the meantime, I still got to eat. I got bills to pay. So, you know, if I got to work, I mean, I got to work, man.
I mean, I'm still painting and creating stuff. I just
especially living in the Bay too. On top of that, it's just like, Dang. So like I guess like coming up, like what do you guys have like in the works?
I put 2 pieces in for the Bend Gallery show in November, and then
a Bend Gallery.
Yeah,
is that the Denver?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And then one for Wonderland SF in the Mission. Did one for them, and then I have a break, and I don't know what I'm doing after that. I'm in no rush.
Okay.
Beyond that, we have a show at a gallery in Santa Rosa next year.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys together?
Yeah, and then
cool.
His Jason wife MJ Avery. And Jason Avery, painter from Santa Rosa as well.
So Jason Avery.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
No, because I'm like, you guys had him on a podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
So I forget about that one.
So I guess with I think I remember hearing you talk about like Prince on a previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like with making products out, relative to you guys' art? Is that something you guys have interest in?
Yeah.
Or like think about much? Or
we just bought. Me and my wife just bought a professional printer, and we're gonna start doing like small runs for just us. I mean, she works with a printer. I don't do it that much, and I'm still trying to figure out like what I want to do with certain things. Like I draw in my sketchbook a lot, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how to transition that to like things that people can afford, like little smaller pieces that are kind of like that mixed medium style, but not. I don't know. And because a ton of people inquire about those kind of things. I know you were saying earlier, people are like, oh, can I buy that? And you're like, oh, it's in my sketchbook, so no.
Yeah.
I get that a ton, and I'm like, all right, well, I think I have to figure out how to kind of do a section of that for people. But yeah, prints and even like a book I've been thinking about a little bit, but it would be further down the road. But other than that, I know my wife's more into like little gizmos and gadget things, but I'm not too much into that. But I'm not like I collect the thing I collect the most is tools. Like that's what I collect, and
that's cool.
And so that doesn't really apply to art. Like I couldn't like put my painting on a saw and sell it.
No, I got it. So what do you guys go to any conventions or anything, or like what's your guys' thoughts on?
The last one I went to a long time was like Alternative Press Expo over in
San Jose.
Is it in San Jose now?
Yeah,
I used to go when it was here. I used to go when it was here in San Francisco.
I'm not knocking San Jose. I'm saying unfortunately that it's out there because like it was just the convenience of having it here in the city. Like I had to like rent I stopped doing it because I had to rent a car, then I have to drive down, set up, then I drive back, and then I end up driving back again for the next day, and it's just like the money that I end up making from that, it just kind of goes into the cost. So with like but actually Ape is
I've never actually done it before. I just have just checked it out. Yeah.
Do those work pretty good for you, those conventions?
I actually really enjoy conventions a lot. Like nice. I mean it's just kind of funny because I remember even the first convention I went to, I was like this is a thing? Like people do this? Like because
I've never even been to one.
Well, like I said, I was in I think my first convention I experienced was like in Florida, and then I realized I was like, oh, this is like a thing that happens throughout different cities. But I mean, the one that I was in Florida was like a comic convention, but it's just cool. Like over time, you start to realize that there's different types of conventions that focus on particular.
Are there fine art ones or?
Like there's kind of. So like
that's more like art fairs almost.
No, well, I mean, well, I don't know. For example, comic. So they have like Artist Alley usually.
The closest thing that I could think of to that is IllexCon. Do you know that one?
Oh, the illustration one.
Yeah,
I haven't been to that one, but I'm actually kind of curious to check that one. But I know that actually the first and last time I actually went to San Diego Comic-Con was 2007, and that was actually really crazy because like the Artist Alley was just like a solid lineup. They had they had James Jean and Paul Pope doing a book signing.
Oh wow.
They had what do you call? I'm trying to think if I met John. Did I meet John Foster? No. Oh no. I guess like Kent Williams like has a representative that shows up.
Right.
It's like I think
that
Spiegelman. Yeah. But what's cool with that booth is it's a chance to see their originals. So they'll bring the originals and they'll have them on display, and then you actually have the opportunity to either buy them or sometimes even like the drawings or like their art books.
Right.
But I remember I bought I met, I think, I met Ken Williams for the first time, and then I bought like an art book from him directly. And
nice.
And then I mean, yeah, there's aspects of that where it's like yeah, there's markets where you can show up and showcase your work. But I mean, what's cool about, I don't know, it's just so cool because it's like, I mean, like I said, I'm also biased because I'm a fan of all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, but the idea that you could show up somewhere where it's just it's like a whole warehouse full of, like, not warehouse, but convention full of like creators, and they're there to showcase what they do, right? Like whether it be a book or art or prints, like it's just a way to actually meet these people in person and interact like face to face. And so like and on both ends, like I love either going as just like a fan just to check out stuff, or on the other end of like being like on like the booth side where I'm actually like selling whatever it is I make. And I, like I said, I enjoy making stuff, so it's like it's an outlet for me to get my product out, but also just the I mean, just meeting people. Like, I like enjoy meeting people as well. So it's like it's kind of cool to see like either meeting other creatives or folks that manage to, I guess, just follow my work either over time, and just seeing like just their in-person reaction to, like, I don't know, either the stuff that I have or just mentioning that they've just kind of followed my work, over some time. But as far as like even like the products that I sell, I mean, yeah, with conventions, I'm also kind of like mindful of like the setup. I'm mindful of like, well, what products move in these type of settings, right? So then you kind of like for me, I kind of gear myself accordingly. Like it's just like, okay, like
I would think it would gear more toward collectible.
Yeah, well, it's just a mix of things, right?
Lower
It
price
depends.
Points.
But I mean, that's the great thing about it, because you have like the scale of price point, right? Because I also bring my originals there, like, so like I have like these bigger ink pieces, but I bring this setup there with like my portfolio so people could actually flip through it.
Yeah,
and I've sold originals that way, where so like that's like on the higher price point, right? But then I have like zines and like booklets of my work, so that's like another price point. And then the patches, right, it's like a cheaper like price point, not like under like $10. And then I also make shirts, and so it's
nice.
And as far as my experience with it, like, I mean, I feel like it's just like a win-win, because it's like it's you get to meet people in person, you get to promote your work, and these are people that are just a lot of times just stumbling across your work. Like they just happen to walk by and you're like, oh, what's this? Like, and it's just interesting, like just the happenstance of just like, if they didn't find you online, they just kind of just randomly come across, just seeing your work. But even just like the opportunities that I've gotten from those experiences have been pretty interesting. It's just like I've had some freelance projects here and there that kind of happen from, like, I don't know, like I get an email where like, oh, I bought your zine like a year ago, and I was just like, trying to find a right project to kind of include you in, and then
that's awesome.
so it's cool. So it kind of it presents more opportunity outside of just, oh, I'm just here selling prints. It's just like it's just the idea of like, or not the idea, but with the platform of I don't know. I guess just all immersing yourself within a community of people that appreciate, what you do or what you create. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. So you say you just never been, or you've never been?
I've never like had a booth at one. No.
Yeah.
But I think we went way over our time.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
Don't worry about it. It was super awesome.
I think I talked too much.
It was a super fun conversation.
Yeah, it flew by. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
No, thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, your Instagram is Bagger43.
It's
so Bagger43 is my art alias, but Bags BAGS 43 is my Instagram handle. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and your website is
Bagger43.com, but it hasn't been updated in a while.
Okay.
But you can still see a collection of just.
That's where you go for the old stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I have like links to like, like I think my Tumblr has like some of my newer stuff, but then Instagram still has like probably my more recent.
Where would you like find products that you would, if like they would want to purchase something like?
I have a link to my Etsy store on my website and in my profile on Instagram. So,
awesome.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, just interested in patches, T-shirts, and
yeah, for
kind of whatever. Feel free to check it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me. Sorry, I kind of just been rambling.
No, it's super cool. It's great. Made my job super easy.
You should have like a part 2 or something. The continuation. Like,
no kidding.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you. This has been Wet and Dry. If you're still listening, fuck off.
Peace.